Well, hello. It's me, God's comic Brad Stein. This is Brad Stein Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. Tonight's guest is the beginning of what I hope to be numerous interviews, a series of interviews intermittently interjected into this podcast over time. And his name, ObjectivelyDan. What is the subject? Atheism versus theism. And I call it the Atheist Experiment. I am taking on atheists' doctrine, their philosophy, their point of view, the way they see the world. And my premise is this: you cannot live a coherent atheistic life that involves meaning, purpose, logic, reason, morals, ethics, goodness, human flourishing. None of those things you can live consistently if atheism is true. If Christianity is true and you want to borrow all those things into your worldview and not even know you're doing it, you're just assuming humans invented it, then yeah, you will think life has meaning and you'll think it's something you created on your own, not realizing that you simply can't make up something in a world that means nothing and pretend suddenly it does. No, there has to be a mind thinking, analyzing, and looking at this information and then seeing if it holds water logically. So that's where I'm going. Now, I got to tell you this, it was my first excursion into this idea of the atheist experiment. So it's going to take some tweaking. I might come across hardcore sometimes, too aggressive. I might make some philosophical flaws. You're free to comment. Hey, that was a straw man argument. Matter of fact, my son Wyatt came on and watched it because he does the editing, and he said, yeah, there's a couple of things that I think could have been straw man. If you don't know what a straw man argument is, it goes like this. I can while away the hours, conversing with the flowers, consorting with the rain. I just if I only had a brain. That's right. The straw man argument is what would happen if you ever have a philosophical argument with the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. Right, Wyatt? Isn't that what the straw man argument is?
No, that's what the straw man argument is, not a straw man argument. Yeah, it's a slight distinction, but it does mean a lot.
So a specific straw man.
Well, specifically the one from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Now, would you consider him a straw man or a straw, nowadays, maybe a straw person?
Well, you got to be politically correct. I mean,
I'm sorry, what was that?
You got to be politically correct.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You have to be.
Wait a minute. Let's try that one more time. What did you say about your dad, Brad Stein, God's comic, whose entire career?
Oh, no. You see, when I said you, I meant the universal you.
Oh, like in the universe.
Yeah, you see, there used to be a point in time in history where people could say that and people somehow knew what you meant.
I see. So it's up to me to bring us back to sanity. Is that what you're trying to get at?
I mean, people have been doing it for decades and then only recently somehow lost the ability to distinguish between the two. So yeah, I'd say it is on you.
Well, anyways, that's what we will be discussing. And you did say you thought there might have been a couple straw men thrown in. If you don't know what the straw man argument is, it is what happens when you talk about somebody else's point of view and you set up a structure by which you define it. Like, oh, you guys believe this, blah, blah, blah. But they don't. And then you tear it apart. And they're like, well, wait a minute. You can't argue against something I don't actually believe. So let me tell you what I believe and then try to take that apart, which, by the way, is equally easy if you're an atheist, because remember, they believe in nothing coming into fruition, into something. They believe that meaninglessness became meaningful, and they believe that non-life became life. In other words, atheists believe in miracles, ironically. Listen, I got to tell you, folks, speaking of miracles, so as we tape this September 10th, 9th, I can't remember. Because I don't believe in calendars any more than my son does. Why? You still go by the Mayan calendar, right? Where you have to have a certain amount of human sacrifices and remove their beating heart to know which day is Wednesday?
No. We went long past that. I'm up to Inca now.
Oh, Incas. Can you give me any kind of insight into their calendar, something unique about it, something that stands out?
No, it stopped existing 13 years ago.
So now it's the day of the rat? Maybe you've gone to the Chinese?
Well, no, nowadays I just sort of guess.
Okay.
I use my vibes to determine
nice.
if the Incas had finished the calendar, what day would they have said it was?
Ooh, it's an Inca vibe. Nice. Yeah. Okay.
And hey, the best part is there were no inconsistencies with it.
You are absolutely punny. Honey man, listen, I got to tell you something, boy. Over this week, I don't know if you noticed this. I guess you wouldn't because you're not an athlete. You're not a sports guy. Matter of fact, is there any sports you ever like watching? Like if you were forced at gunpoint to watch a sport, is there one you would watch?
That's a good question. Most sports are really boring and derivative of each other. I would say bowling's pretty fun.
You like watching bowling?
Well, it's one of the only sports where the ball is hard enough that you probably don't want to, kick.
Okay, that makes sense. And you bowled. You were a bowler. You got a letter in bowling in high school, which is as exciting as saying I used to play the tuba in a marching band.
At least I played a sport.
That's true. And you actually were on the varsity bowling team.
I have no idea how they let me on there.
Ravenwood High School in Brentwood, Tennessee. And you were there, I think, 2 or 3 years. You got it.
Something like that, yeah.
You killed it. You were a bowling phenom. And if you're going to be a phenom, do it in bowling. Now, I think you like kind of, and I don't know why, golf.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun.
Why?
Well, I don't know. There's something so satisfying about a ball going into a hole. That's just like the perfect size for it, There's something satisfying about things fitting together so perfectly.
Well, basketball on the basketball rim is kind of the same.
Well, no, only if you get a swish. Nothing but net. If you hit the rim, then it's like it's like you're playing bowling, but you're using the bumpers at that point.
Okay.
Not the same feeling of satisfaction.
Okay, I get you. No, it's a satisfaction thing with you. That's how you've always gauged your sporting desires and loves.
Well, how do you do it? If you're not satisfied, how do you think the audience is going to feel?
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, I did want to say this, though. So I was watching a little bit about what was happening over the week, and there was a scenario where they were at a baseball game. Are you ready for this? And I don't know if you've been to a baseball game, but I don't know if you've ever been in the outfield, but if the guy hits a home run and they have bleachers out there, you try to catch the ball, and if you get it, you get to keep it. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
Including a foul ball, right? That's the weird thing about, I think it's the only sport where when they hit the ball out of, you get to keep it instead of just giving it back. They don't kick field goals in football and suddenly they get to keep the ball. They don't. Got to give it back. You don't get the ball in the hole in golf. Rarely do you see a guy with his bowling ball throw it out into the crowd. Rarely. At least if you don't want a lawsuit. Though it's hysterical for the viewing audience. Let's just be honest about that. But what?
Human bowling.
Oh.
It's a new upcoming thing.
Yeah.
It's when you bowl, but you release the ball backwards.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Nobody expects it.
Nobody expects it, which is what's even funnier, especially if it's the elderly.
And it makes it much harder for them to run away from it.
Much harder. And
it makes it easier to get a strike.
Indeed, because you struck and you saw your permanent record, as well as you struck them in the shoulder, the head, the noggin, the foot, wherever you struck them, it hurts in bowling. I'm going to be honest about that. Anyways, in this particular case, it was, I think, in Philadelphia, which sums it all up. I don't know if you know much about the Philadelphia sports fans, but they are known throughout the United States as the rudest, most just lunatic fans in sports. I mean, they're not known as nice people. Now, does that mean that everybody in Philadelphia is not a nice person? Yeah, that's what it means. And that's why we send them to Philadelphia. So that's where all the nice people get sent. But they ran out of room, Wyatt. So some of them had to spill over into Manhattan, and others spilled over into, Berkeley, California. A couple else ended up in Boulder, Colorado. And just a handful ended up in Boston. But for the most part, Philly is not known for gracious fans or nice people. They're very... And this is not me making this up on the fly, by the way. This is not me just being mean towards Philadelphia, because I've been to Philadelphia many times, including 1966, when I got to watch Don Drysdale pitch the first half of a doubleheader against the Phillies, of which he lost. And then Sandy Koufax pitched the second game and won. And the Dodgers went to the World Series, only to be swept in 4 games by the Baltimore Orioles. But that's another story. But here's the deal, son. So I've been to Philadelphia. It's a Independence Hall is there. The Constitution ratified, Declaration of Independence. The Liberty Bell is there. All of these amazing parts of the United States' amazing history. So much is there in Philadelphia. Incredible part of our nation's history. So I mean, but you got to go back 250 years to find fans that weren't so obstinate and aggressive and mean-spirited, or whatever you want to call it. Anyways, I'm not making it up. Everybody kind of knows that. There was even a time, I don't know if it's still the case, when a lot of players didn't want to play in Philadelphia because the fans are so mean, including to the local team talent when they were failing miserably. Anyways, in this case, it was in Philly, okay? And so a guy hit a home run. And here's the deal. People fight for the ball. They just do. Everybody's running up there. Everybody's trying to grab it. Oftentimes it bounces, hopefully off of somebody's head. Then it's hysterical. It's going flying. Everybody's running. Somebody's jumping over a bleacher. Somebody's losing his beer. It's hysterical. It's pandemonium for the joy of the viewer who's not involved in the midst of the tornado. But here's the thing. Wherever it ends, you get up and whoever grabs it wins. Well, so a guy was went, I don't know, 5 or 6 seats over to try to catch the ball like everybody does. So it wasn't in his little area, right? But everybody does that. You're just, boom, you're running, you're jumping, you're doing, somebody's got a glove, somebody else. Ball kind of happens. A woman, I guess, gets kind of a hands on, drops it. It's falling all over the place. This guy's grabs it. Woohoo! Shows everybody, runs back to his son. This is a grown man. Son might be 10, 11, right? And he says, son, look at this, and threw it in his glove. And it's like, wow, we got a ball. Isn't this amazing? Well, the woman who lost the ball and had a big old Phillies jersey on came running after this guy. And this is all being filmed. So, because I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but when you go to major league sporting events, they have a lot of cameras. And they will show the audience, oh, look, a foul ball went over here, or look, this thing happened over there. Oh, a home run certainly is going to be there. And this woman ran over to this guy and started berating this man. You took my ball. That was mine. And this guy's like, whoa, wait. No. We're just, this is the decorum. Unfortunately, you fight for the ball. Whoever wins, wins. He didn't rip it out of her hand. He didn't push her down. He didn't hit her with a bowling ball, even though, as we've already established, that's hysterical. No, he just kind of grabbed it off the ground after it was bungled by this woman, and she just read him the riot act. And as you know, Independence Hall is where we ratified the Constitution, and part of the Constitution in the First Amendment is you can peacefully protest, but you can't riot. And yet she was reading them the riot act. So once again, kind of an irony to be in Philadelphia and constantly breaking even the legal requirements of our Constitution. But that's for another time, for a historian to unpack. But anyways, she's just screaming and yelling. And finally, this guy's like, wait, just back up. His son's sitting there, obviously like confused. He reaches in his son's glove, takes a gun, gives it to her, and is like, whatever, ma'am, thank you. I just don't want any problems. Well, so what ends up happening is that they film this, right? Because they're all watching it, and other people maybe have their cell phone, so they immediately post this. Now, the team got wind of it. I think it was the Marlins or somebody was maybe playing Philadelphia, or maybe it was in Marlins Stadium, and it was, I don't know. It hasn't. Please tell me it was Philadelphia, because I just made a big rant against Philadelphia fans. But anyways, he gives it back to her, right? And they ended up giving this boy like a swag bag. They came up and they signed a ball and had a this and that, and they said, "We are so sorry." And afterwards, they met with him afterwards. And now that I'm thinking about it, this might be incredibly interesting. I think he went in and he got into the tunnel, and even one of the Phillies signed this ball. So maybe, just maybe it wasn't in Philadelphia. Maybe my big diatribe against Philadelphia fans, well, okay, it wasn't the fans in general, but a Philadelphia fan even would make it even worse, because she's in another stadium pulling this nonsense. So either way, it still works. Philadelphia fan, Philly thing. Okay. Whew. Didn't want to look like a hypocrite or have to refilm this whole thing so I don't look like an idiot. And why? Let's face it. Do I want to look like an idiot?
Are you sure that's the question you want me to answer?
So here's what I was going to say about...
I'm just saying.
I was just moving forward, is that... so they start posting this woman's picture from a screen grab from her out screaming at this guy and getting this ball back. Other people took the videos, and it ends up online. And so somehow people immediately get to, who is this person? They find her Facebook page. They expose her. Now we know her. She's doxxed, basically. And an interesting phenomenon took place in my spirit. I am a Christ follower. So why it puts me at a severe disadvantage. And I'll tell you why. To be a Christ follower means you have to give your life away to the moral standards that Christ would expect. And much of that is sacrificing your own desires, your own wants, your own needs for the sake of others. It's being kind to the stranger, and very unusually and oddly, love your enemy. Pray for those that would despitefully use you. So Christianity has this demand upon your spirit and your character that is kind of one of a kind. Atheism has no equivalent. That's for dang sure. When atheists are given power, they rape, mutilate, burn, kill, and destroy like nobody's business. Nobody, and I mean nobody's a faster study when it comes to destroying humanity and human rights as atheists. They are the creme de la creme. Just look at any Marxist regime, look at any atheist regime. Yes, but they didn't do it in the name of atheism. No, they didn't. That's what makes it even worse. They were given permission because atheism was the undergirding of this political structure that allows them to basically run roughshod and destroy any human dignity whatsoever, because they believe the state is God and they are the elite, thus the rulers, thus the state representatives, thus in fact they are God. And go to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. They have to worship like God. Mao Zedong. All of the atheists take the worship upon themselves because atheism is demonic. It's the original religious cult to exist because God created you and then say you're not there. But that was the original sin, right? Was that Satan said, I will be like God. So it's consistent. To see atheists act like atheists doesn't shock me. I expect it. When a Christian acts like a non-Christian, it stands out because we have a self-correcting book, the revelation of reality known as the Bible, the most amazing book in human history because it's true. And it tells us that when somebody acts like a Christian shouldn't, not only can you expose it and observe it, but it says don't act like that. And you're not acting like a Christian. Doesn't mean you're not. You might be a Christian hypocrite. You might be a Christian not a good guy, a Christian undisciplined, a Christian not serving Christ well. That is for sure. That there have been people who claim to be Christians that have done evil things. Let me be very clear up front. That is true. But the good news is you don't gauge people by what they call themselves. I mean, I've seen even Hitler at some point said he was a Christian. Well, there's nothing in his behavior, in the fruit of his existence, that is Christian. No, Christians aren't allowed to murder. Christians aren't allowed to be racist. They're not allowed to kill Jews. They're not allowed to think they're better than other people. They're not allowed to think they're a superior race. There's no race, there's only human race. They are not allowed to hate people. So there was nothing about this man that anyone would have ever looked at and said, there's a Christian for it. No, not at all, except the atheists who like to say he was a Christian, see what he was like, because atheism, by its very nature, is a toxic religion, because it allows you full reign to mock, ridicule, and harm and hurt others and find joy in that. Remember, atheists are the one that get online and they see a religious person say, oh, you're sky daddy, you're a flying spaghetti monster. These people get joy, make no mistake, joy and pleasure out of hurting people's feelings and then considering them to be the brights. They call themselves that. We're the brights. We're the good ones. We're the ones that really have abandoned God, and we see science as our religion. We are, as scientists, the new priesthood, and the state and those that are logically and reasonable people will be the gods by which we will base all humanity on from now on. And of course, it's all subjective because it's just your opinion, which means there are no parameters. You have no morals you have to abide by other than supposedly trying to bring human flourishing to humanity. But what if my human flourishing means I want to kill you, rape your wife so I can have more progeny? There's nothing you can tell me. You can say I don't like that. You can try to say that isn't the way to live, but it's a preference. It's not a law. It's not something that I am bound by unless you believe in Christianity. This is part of what you're going to see in this interview, that they make behavioral choices based on morals that they can't justify. There is no moral justification in atheism at all, not in the foundation of it. They can do moral things, but the morals are based on, defined by Christian principles. So they can't gather them from molecules and aberrations and mutations. That's all they believe in. We're here by accident. We mutated into people. So there's no laws imposed in the human condition. We just made them up to supposedly keep us alive for a while until we died. But we all die. We die soon. And then we have more progeny that dies, and nothing ever lasts. And eventually the entire universe will collapse on itself. Thus, none of this mattered. This entire thing was an illusion. It was a nightmare. And yet, they live like life has meaning, and they can't grasp that. I bring this up to Objectively Dan, and he took umbrage with that. He said, well, you don't think I can think or understand this? And I said, no, I don't think you can think about this or understand this, because I've never met an atheist that can. They don't understand that to say things have meaning when there's no meta meaning, no giant novel by which we're just plucking out a chapter, means that there is no meaning. If there's no novel, then there's no chapter to talk about. And that's what they think they're doing when they say, well, I make my own meaning, create their own chapters. Now, this woman now is all over the internet, right? And people are like, make her famous. So it's basically doxing. It's basically that. And here's my dilemma. My first thought was good. Let her have it. Full guns bear, what a jerk, because and when you see her, she's ridiculous. She's over the top, right? Well, here's the thing. We've all been there. We've all done crazy crap out of the blue, not expecting to be filmed and that it was going to a baseball game. Didn't know that my demand to get my ball back was going to cause me to, be hunted in my workplace and in my home, and just be basically a giant scarlet letter now upon you for eternity. You become a meme even. How about that? You become a meme, a Karen, right? And so my first thought was, because I'm a human and so I'm a sinner, yeah, let her have it. What a jerk, taking that from a little kid. You lost the ball. That's the way it is. Everybody knows the decorum of looking for home runs. If you lose it and I get it, I won. That's the game. Anyways. And then I had to stop and go, wait a minute. Do I want a world where everything you ever do, every mistake you ever made is recorded, and then that's put out there for the mob to grab their pitchforks and their torches? and go hunting for me or my family or my friends or my neighbors because they did make a mistake, which, by the way, can't they say, all right, I lost my head. I just felt like they stole my thing. I'm sorry. Don't we have redemption in the West? Yeah, it's because Christianity teaches you that you have to forgive even your enemies. So that's the beautiful thing about it. It's what brings balance back to the culture. It's what allows us to self-censor those things that are evil and to self-regulate morality. Atheists have none of this. Not from their, I say it again, not from their foundational worldview. They have stolen it from Christians. Now, that's okay, because to me, it's a proof of God. You have to use our moral standards to allow civilization to function properly, thus proving God exists. Everything you say, everything you do, every move you make that has to do with morals, ethics, logic, reason, goodness, and helping the downtrodden, everything that you believe is a Christian construct. And so it just proves God's existence, because everything you do is another proof of God. Here I am. And that's what I tell them, Objectively Dan, is that this is God knocking on your door. But I also did something else, guys. I did 2 episodes of this. So I'm going to do one where I was going full blown, guns a-blazing, and I told them, by the way, and you'll see, here's what I'm going to do. So I'm just letting you know up front, because I want to see if this works, if this makes sense. The second one I tried to go find some other information that we hadn't really covered in the first one. And I tried to take a little bit different approach, because I'm trying to find the proper balance and be the best effective person I want to be. Because let's face it, folks, it doesn't matter what you say if nobody's listening, right? So you want to figure out a way to say the important things in a way that people might be inspired by. So all that to be said, why am I bringing up this woman and the baseball thing? Because it's kind of like, we've gotten used to this mob mentality. We've gotten used to, hey, let's let her have it. And especially if it's somebody that we think is on the opposing team, on the opposing worldview, on the opposing country, from the opposing culture, the opposing philosophy, the opposing age group or bracket, the tribalism, finding my group, my tribe, everybody else is an outsider, and they need to be strung up like the Incas. And as you know, Wyatt's a huge Inca fan. We don't know why, but that's how he gauges his calendar. Unless he's adjusted in the last few minutes, Wyatt.
Yeah.
Did you adjust your Inca calendar?
Still working on it. It's kind of hard to carve new stuff into the stone.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you using iron, like an Iron Age? I don't know which section of humanity you've decided to rest upon to do the carving.
Inca.
Have you?
Where they're from.
So I had Bronze Age.
Yeah, bronze, or I think brass. One of those 2 things.
Brass Age.
Yeah.
So if you can't at least carve your information there, you can at least make a trombone.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't play it, but I can just make it.
No, well, yeah. But nevertheless, you're on your way to creating an orchestra or at least a brass band, whatever. You're a band guy. You love bands. You love music. If there was any other instrument you could be an expert at, since you chose drumming, but there was another one, what would you choose?
Bass guitar. Bass guitar easily.
Bass guitar easy. And that is because?
It is so funky.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Can drums be funky?
Oh, absolutely they can.
Okay. What?
Drums and bass are the funky ones. Everyone else just follow suit.
So funky is, what is the beat structure that we define as funky?
It's a lot of syncopation and certain techniques like slapping.
Okay.
That just create certain tones that are designated funky.
Yeah.
It's like it's sort of like a style.
Yeah, but is there a way to demo that, or
like I said,
describe?
Like I said, syncopation,
Okay.
going off beat. So 1, syncopation is da 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 da. That's syncopation because you're off the beat.
Okay.
We've had this conversation at least a dozen times.
You've been out on podcasts during trombone talks.
I'm pretty sure nobody tuned into Brad Stein Has Issues for an in-depth lesson on basics syncopation.
Yeah, you could be right. Well, listen.
But hey, maybe this is what gets us down to 200 views instead of 199.
Yeah, it's what I'm not going to.
Maybe that's what we need to do.
That's my boy. Well, listen, I got to ask you, Wyatt, over the week, did anything interesting happen to you you that you wanted to let the viewers in on so that they could pray for you or laugh at you about?
You're saying that as though there's an answer to this I should know. And I have if it is, I have completely forgotten about it.
Well, listen, I got to tell you. So you still like to play magic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, have you ever had anybody tell you that that was like demonic and you shouldn't play it?
Yes. If there was something, I guarantee you that someone somewhere hates it.
Yeah, I get that. Now, but what I was wondering, because you're a Christ follower, you're a believer, you have the Holy Spirit inside of you, and I know you see God and you want to do the best you can. So you've never had like any check in your spirit, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this because I got to be honest, to me, I get that it's kind of like fantasy and it's kind of fun and it's kind of like, what's the difference between that and watching Lord of the Rings, right? It's all magic and pretend, but it was written by a Christian using Christian allegories, but using magic and elves and all these other things to make a point. So, I mean, if we think that imagination, there's no Jesus mentioned in Lord of the Rings, but there are all these characters that represent him. I don't know which character represents like Christ in Lord of the Rings. Do you know?
No, but I know who does in Narnia. Chronicles of Narnia.
Who?
Aslan.
Aslan, yeah, he's Jesus.
Yeah.
But the other guys represent some or other. But you know that C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, was good friends with J.R. Tolkien, who wrote that. And J.R. Tolkien led C.S. Lewis to Christ. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he witnessed to him and brought him to Christ. So that's how close they were. And they were called the Inklings, I think. They would get together every week and a few other writers and read each other what they had written. And so they, in this bar, having a pint of beer or whatever they drank, would talk about, here's my latest thing. And so the Lord of the Rings would have been read to these guys. What do you think? And as well as C.S. reading it back. Now, I never read The Lord of the Rings. I hear the books are unbelievable. Maybe some of the first fantasy books or so, or at least some of the most famous. But
absolutely, yeah.
But didn't the guy even create his own language? I mean, he was hardcore.
Elvish, yeah.
Huh?
Elvish, yeah. He
Elvish.
created it. Yeah, Elvish.
It's literally is a full language.
It's a full one. You can learn to read it and write it and stuff, yeah.
Wow.
And speak it even, I think.
Wow. Do you know any Elvish words?
No.
Oh.
I do not know any of those words.
Elf word would be maybe tinsel, Santa Claus.
No.
Reindeer. No.
We're talking about the tall, lanky, one with nature elves, not the short, stocky.
Oh.
Locked in a sweatshop. And
dwarf-like.
Elves. Yeah. Those are different things.
Okay, so you're saying that the elves in Narnia are tall and lanky.
I mean, are they Christmas elves?
I don't know, Wyatt. I'm asking you.
No, there were elves in Narnia.
Well, then why would there be elves? No. In Rings.
No. Those are the tall, lanky one with nature elves.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I've never watched any of the movies.
And that's very apparent. So then why bring it up if you didn't even know the subject material?
I think the key, though, is were the elves in Lord of the Rings incels?
Now, that is a question of great scientific debate. There was currently no definitive proof either way. However, the proponents of each side are hard set in their ultimate conclusions. Yes, thank you. It's always the last word I somehow forget.
See, that's what I love about you, son. You're really smart and you nail it and you're logically consistent and you bring us down the garden path and we're just about to get to the big conclusion and then you just short circuit.
It's like I'm really good at 99% of it. Unfortunately, the 1% I suck at is the most important.
Yeah, you're not a closer.
Well, no, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like the one word I need just vanishes from my vocabulary.
Do you think, I'm going back to that woman that is all over the internet now in her life?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that, does that bother you? Do you feel like you don't want a world like that? Because I kind of don't.
I kind of don't think I have a choice.
Okay.
I cannot like it all I want.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's reality. So you kind of have to live with it regardless.
All right. So if you're just being pragmatic about it is what it is, so we just have to function.
Well, I didn't say it is what it is necessarily, because that implies that you're just supposed to go with the flow and not do anything about it.
But what I'm saying is, do you think the world is a better place because that's what we do now to people? Or
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Just like I don't think the world's a better place because people somehow cannot tell what words mean, as evidenced by earlier today. I said you, and you said that I was referring to Brad Stein, when I was using the version of the word that means everyone.
I got you.
You can't.
Humanity.
When I say you can't do that and expect to have a genuine conversation, I am not directly talking to you.
I got you.
Brad Stein.
I get you.
You do you remember the time when you could say stuff like that and people knew what you meant?
Yeah.
When did that change?
I think when people got hypersensitive to a new moral structure, whereas they were looking for racism. They are looking for offensiveness. This is all Marxist, by the way, which is perfect lead into our next guest, Objectively Dan, the atheist, because Marxism is atheism ennobled in political philosophy. It's given teeth to atheists to go do as much damage as they can to the bourgeoisie, the owners of production. Everybody's evil but them. And the danger of that self-appointed systemic narcissism, that is atheism, and it has to be because it's worship of self, literally. I mean, if there's no God and you are making choices and moral choices that you say don't come from any transcendent, then it has to come from you. And that's as narcissistic definitionally as it gets. I'm not making it up, nor am I, being pejorative towards them. I'm saying if you worship self as the ultimate arbiter of reality and morality, you're God. That's just true. Atheists don't understand that about themselves, but I think it's because they're based on a two-legged stool, arrogance and anger. That seems to be what has driven most atheists that I've encountered. But probably the third leg of that stool is it came from pain. Somewhere, somehow, God didn't show up when they needed him. God wasn't part of the world that they wanted to be true. Or somehow they simply didn't want to have to bow the knee to something bigger than themselves. And so they became God. I'll make the decisions. I will be the final arbiter of reality. And, no pun intended, God help the man or woman that gets in my way. Well, it's funny, son, because I've tried to understand the best way I could use whatever gifts and talents God's given me, and those are suspect to be true as to what I'm good at. But what I try to be good at least what I try to use in the gifts that God gives me, is comedy. When I do stand-up comedy, is talking about interesting subjects that are a little bit more serious when it comes to the podcast. When it comes to my live events at churches, I do men-only events where I try to ennoble men to become warriors, where I try to bring humor to people and make cultural commentary, when I try to talk on Sundays about being a disciple, and a Sunday afternoon apologetic show to prove that God exists. These are things I'm trying to do with the gifts that God gives me in my interest, to be at the last stages of my life telling the good story that in fact God does exist, and you can know him and you can live forever in eternity, in beauty, in utopia, in impossibility, in unmanageable, unimaginable glory. That's what we're shooting for. That's what I believe. And here's the good news. If I'm wrong, I'll never know. But if you're an atheist and you're wrong, you'll know forever. And I don't want you in hell. I have no obligation to love you, but I do because of what Christ said. So that, again, allows me to do what you don't have to do, circumvent my natural desires to give to somebody that doesn't deserve. Because you know what? I'm a Christ follower and I don't deserve it. But God figured out a way to get me in. So my job, my son's job, is to try to help you get there too. And that's what we're trying to use this podcast to do. By the way, if you are a church and you would like to bring me in to speak, just go to info@bradstein.com and you can do that. If you have never subscribed to my YouTube channel, Brad Stein Has Issues, please subscribe and notify and pass it out. And please comment and please watch this show. If you're watching right now, put it on your phone, even if you're watching by your computer, and leave it on, because the more the algorithms see that people are interested and stick around, the more they'll send it out to other people. Well, as you know, I have always tried to bring on the most interesting guests. And this next guest is somebody that I stumbled upon serendipitously, because if you are a fan of my show and watched it, I had on a few months ago Dr. William Lane Craig, which is still to this day the only guest I've had on that I was intimidated somewhat to talk to, because I just have such an admirer of his intellect and his acumen when it comes to apologetics and philosophy. And I've listened to him for so long that I couldn't believe the man would allow me to speak. But he's a Christ follower, humble guy. And so, I was grateful to have that experience, but also to see that this is what the body needs, is to work together and allow each other to grow together with our own particular gifts. Mine is comedy and rhetoric and whatnot, and his is philosophy. So I had an entire episode about atheism and how it didn't feel coherent. I said, what am I missing, Dr. Craig? That these people try to act like life is meaning, but then they say life is meaningless, but they still say if I make up a meaning, suddenly it is meaningful to me. And it's like, but that's subjective. It isn't ultimately meaningful. And so that means it really isn't. It's a self-delusion. He agreed with me, but I needed to find an atheist. And I said to him, I really want to bring atheists on and just talk to them and see if my theory holds true to them. I want to see if, and frankly, is equally important, if not more so, convince them to understand where they're missing the mark on their own philosophy, a self-delusion, if you will. Well, I got a note out of the blue by a guy saying, I saw your William Lane Craig interview, and I would like to volunteer as an atheist to discuss these ideas. And so I looked into who he is. His name is ObjectivelyDan. He has his own podcast, and he brings on atheists as well as Christians and everybody else. And of course, he's speaking from an atheist perspective. But I said, yeah, man, let's do this. I got to start somewhere. And I was nervous about it only because I don't want to do it badly. I don't want to be a poor representation of Christ to him or any other the atheist community, because I almost feel like I'm called to be of some value to them, maybe bring some of them to the kingdom, maybe bring some of them home who were Christians and went astray, which is Dan's life. He was a believer and then abandoned it. I do question if you were a true believer and then rejected Christ, if you can come back. I feel like maybe you can't, because you no longer have the Holy Spirit even to allow you to see what sin is and be convicted. I could be wrong. I hope I am. But we even discussed that, I think. But I want you guys to understand before we jump in. I did do another one, which will come on next week. I rarely do 2 parts, but I'm doing it this time because I did take a little bit more peaceful approach the second time. I was trying to find the best way to be aggressive in righteous indignation and trying to help them see something that I felt like they couldn't overcome intellectually by self-imposed guardrails as to how they see the world. And so I tried a different attack the second time. And as I hybridize these things and look at them and try to get better and better and have more and more atheists on, I hope it teaches you ways to discuss your worldview with other people you come into contact with, atheists, nominal believers, agnostics, other belief systems. And I hope it helps you. I hope it's interesting. I hope it's intriguing and has some sense of inspiring you to want to learn as much as you can about your faith and to be able to give an answer to everyone who asks. So that's what this is. So I'm just warning you up front who are listening on Salem Life Audio, or if you're watching this on my YouTube channel or anywhere else, I made it clear, but it may not show up in all the clips that, hey, buddy, I'm going to try this. It's an experiment. So I might do it wrong. I might later regret. I might have to apologize. I don't know. But I really feel I need to try it like this. And he agreed. He said, okay, no, it's fine. You can't offend me. Do whatever you say whatever you want. And so even in that, the man got offended a couple of times. So it does show you that even atheists are human. They have feelings too. And it's interesting though, because if you're an atheist, you shouldn't really have feelings because they're all delusional. Once again, the fact that you get your feelings hurt, which are not real, they're just feelings, is a proof of God. That's the premise of what you're about to watch. Everything is a proof of God. That's why atheists can't see it. They're swimming in the proofs of God, and thus they take it for granted. That's what we're going to explore in this first episode of the Atheist Experiment. I hope you enjoy it. God's Comic, Brad Stein, and Objectively Dan. Well, folks, welcome once again to Brad Stein Has Issues, and this should be an interesting interview, I hope. I can't imagine it won't be, and here's why. For those of you who've listened or watched me over the years, and if you haven't, you're going to hell. You need to know that. But the most important thing to remember is this. I try to bring on as many types of personalities and eclectic insights and wisdoms and thoughts as I can. That's what makes life interesting to me, is different people talking about different things from different perspectives. And the hope always is that you can agree to disagree agreeably or find some common ground. And that's what I certainly am going to try to do today. But keep in mind that this is very specific because it was sort of an idea I've had for a long time. Many of you might have heard my interview with William Lane Craig, and that was one of my favorite interviews only because I've respected him for so many years and have watched so much of his work. He's a double doctorate. I think he was voted one of the top 100 philosophers in the world, influentially, and one of the top 10 Christian philosophers in the world. So I got to speak to him. It was a privilege. But what I really was struggling with was atheism and how they interact with the world, and is it coherent? That was my premise. Something was really disturbing me about what I would see in those engagements online, in interviews or in debates. And so he kind of took the devil's advocate, no pun intended, and we discussed those ideas. Well, anyways, I said I'd love to talk to some actual atheists and have these conversations. And one of them reached out. His name? Well, it's Objectively Dan, which I'm objectively assuming isn't actually his name, but that's what he goes by, and that'll work. But he said, "Hey, I'd love to try to, engage you and see if we can find something interesting to talk about." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And so that's why he's here. So this will be my first. No, it won't be my first atheist I've had on. That would have been James Lindsay, but it'll be my first one where we're discussing these ideas. Might be a train wreck, or it might be really interesting. I hope the latter is the case. So, folks, please welcome to Brad Stein Has Issues, Objectively Dan. How do you do, sir?
I'm great, Brad. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Well, listen, before we get started, I do want to ask you quickly just a little bit about yourself, just so people know what it is that you bring to the table. I believe you have a podcast, and is it from an atheist perspective, or is it just sort of different philosophical dialogues about different ideas?
Yeah, so I've been volunteering with an organization called the Atheist Community of Austin for a number of years now. They're most known for a show called The Atheist Experience. It's a call-in show. It's been around for a little over 20 years now. Started off on public access and then got onto YouTube. And a couple of years ago, they were expanding some shows, and I pitched an idea for them called Truth Wanted. And the idea is that I kind of named it that as a kind of a honeypot. The idea was I wanted to get people from all kinds of beliefs, not just God beliefs, but Bigfoot, aliens, you name it.
Okay.
And we just talked about why people believe and why.
Okay.
And so that's also a call-in show. And I've been doing that since 2018. So that's what I think most people know me from.
Now, and in your call-ins, do you have a majority of perspectives that call in most often? In other words, is it usually people of faith that are trying to debate you, or is it usually atheists that are agreeing with you?
I'd like to think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
We definitely have atheists that call in. We definitely have Christians that call in. I have a lot of atheists that call in that'll try to convince me that the thing that they saw was aliens or ghosts. I'll have Christians that try to call in that tell me, "Hey, I should come back to being a believer. I used to be a Christian myself." So it's a wide variety of calls. Sometimes really out there stuff, but it's never not interesting. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, right. Well, and do you have any, not that I care, I mean, not that it matters to this conversation, probably, I'm sure you're a smart guy, but do you have any degrees or anything maybe that you studied, or philosophical degrees or anything that drew you to this information, or is it
I have a
mainly-
bachelor's in communication studies, but I do work a day job. Everything else I do on the side, podcast wise, is just for fun, really. But yeah, that's the degree of qualification.
Well, nothing to be apologizing for because I have a high school education. That's it. I'm an autodidact. So everything I've ever learned, studied, thought about was through the idea of contemplation, introspection, and reading. Just trying to figure the things out on my own terms. It's just the way my brain's wired. It's a double-edged sword. To be severely ADHD and all these other mental disorders that I suffer from also can make you interesting. I'm a professional comic as well, an actor and everything. So there's an artistic bent to that that's interesting to folks, but also some challenges with us. So,
Absolutely.
but
As
anyways,
someone
that,
who has ADHD
oh,
myself, I concur, you
yeah.
know. I probably wouldn't do all the things that I do without my various interests that come and go in different things, right? So yeah, totally agree with
Yeah,
you
oh,
there.
and I think that that is, it's kind of an interesting a kind of an interesting observation that those who aren't settled, that they're always searching because they get bored, but it makes us interesting. We're Renaissance people. We're the
Hmm.
ones that sculpted and did science. We just wanted to keep going. We couldn't stay still. And I think that's important because clearly it's what has allowed humans to get this far is their search for meaning. And so here's what I wanted to preface this with, Dan. And so I'm going to just be perfectly frank, all the cards on the table with you straight up so that we're, in on the same page. It's this. Um, you're a guinea pig in
Mm.
this particular conversation. And what I mean by that is, and you contacted me because you saw the William Lane Craig conversation I had. And
Right.
you said, "Man, I'll volunteer. I'd love to talk about this idea." And I appreciate it. It's
Mm.
good. I'm grateful for that because I really am excited about this. I think there's something interesting can come from this. But here's what I want you to know up front is that I hope that I take a little bit different tact than is usually what is seen in a theist atheist discussion. Most of the ones that I've seen, and I've seen hundreds of debates and dialogues, and atheists just making their claims and theists making their claims. I'm very interested in philosophy, very interested in theology, apologetics, and logic and read. I just love that stuff. It just interests me, and so I absorb those things. And yes, I've listened to many atheists because I want to know, what are you thinking? Why do you think the way I find it fascinating.
Sure.
So that's and obviously you do too. Because you spent a lot of your life engaging in this, apparently for no pay, so that means it's a labor of love, and that's good. But here's what I'm getting at, and so I'm going to ask you to bear with me because I may not do this the way I hope it does work. It may not work right. It might kind of stutter and get the gears get clogged up, maybe. But I just want to try to see if I can approach this a little bit differently than usually is done. And you might get a sense of it based on what you saw me talking to William Lane Craig about.
Hmm.
And just see if it helps us, at least, if nothing else, find a different way to talk about this subject because frankly there's only so many things you can talk about and discuss when it comes to theism and atheism. I mean,
Sure.
there's
Sure.
only so many perspectives that can be re-examined and re-explored. I mean, it's not that complicated frankly. And so what we end up doing is we end up in a philosophical specificity. For example, oh, let's talk. I think God exists. Well, here's the ontological argument. Here's the teleological argument. Here's the design argument. Here's the moral argument. And they're interesting because they're very
Hmm.
specific. But I think that's a problem.
Mm.
And here's why I think it's a problem.
Okay.
I think that it cedes too much ground to people who don't deserve it, and that's atheists.
Mm.
Now, here's what I mean by that. And you have to bear with me because I have a deep disadvantage. I'm a Christ follower, I'm a Christian. What I mean by that is this: I am obligated by my faith to love people, including my enemies and those who want to butcher me. We are the most persecuted religious group on earth by Pew data, whatever, whoever does all those polls, for our faith. And so, and we are not allowed to go kill under our name. People have done it, but we're not allowed. And we are forbidden to hate people, but I'm commanded to hate ideas that are against God's edicts. That's the difference. So that's obviously where I'm coming from. I wouldn't believe in God if I didn't think I needed to defend that perspective. Otherwise,
Sure.
what am I doing?
Yeah.
So I want to see if I can pull this off, and bear with me and give me some grace, because I don't want it to come across. I don't know if it's aggressive. That's my comedy, but I don't want it to come across. I guess mean spirited. I don't mean it that way, but I do feel like it's going to be fairly. I'm not going to give you a lot of leeway. I'm going to expect you to answer some questions so we can see if we're actually getting somewhere instead of just spinning our wheels. That's what my goal is. And we'll see what happens. But again, that's why I appreciate you coming on, and that's why I'm trying to be very honest with you, so you don't feel like I'm trying to gotcha or anything like that. I just want to really get down to brass tacks, because I do believe, and I'm going to start with this question. I believe that the single most important question in human history is, does God exist? It is here's why I believe that. Because I think, and I'll let you answer, there's only two answers, yes or no. You know, I believe God exists. I don't believe. Now, of course, he might come in God's polytheism. He might come in spiritualism or whatever. You know, I mean, so I'm not just, this isn't necessarily Christian God, but just God in general, or non-God. Okay. And so I think it's the single most important question, because however you answer that question will affect every other answer you'll give for every other question you will ever have. And I'm talking about the most important questions in life. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What are we up to? The only answer I can find is in the conclusion to yes, God, no, God. So let me start with that and give you the respect. Do you agree with that premise that the most important question in human history, to really find the answers to what we're all searching for, is, does God exist?
Well, great question to start with. Before I answer that, I want to respond to your preamble very briefly, because I thought that was really great. I really appreciate you trying to bring a dialogue to me. I'm obviously not your typical guest on here. And I expect to treat you the same way I treat every single person that calls into my shows, with the respect that you deserve. So I absolutely can take any question you want to throw at me. Even the hard ones, go ahead. I'm an open book on that.
Okay, cool.
So as far as, is it the most important question? I would say for me, it definitely was. I told you I grew up as a Christian.
Mhm.
I'm from Waco, Texas.
Mm.
Okay, so a lot of things about Waco, right?
I've been there.
Not the best reputation, right? But it's where I'm from, and a lot of Christians
Is
in Waco.
Waco where Buddy Holly's from?
Is he from? Actually, I don't know if that's true.
Oh, okay.
I think when most people, when they think of Waco, they think of Koresh, right?
Oh yeah,
So
right, right.
that's why I make the joke there,
Gotcha,
right?
gotcha.
Because that's what most people think of. But so I grew up there, and I grew up as a Christian, and went to church as a believer. Been both to the Baptist and Methodist church, and it was because I took this question so seriously that I did the investigation that I did, because when I was getting around to my college age, I kind of realized I don't know if the reasons I believed were as good as I thought that they were. So I really started to test that and started to look at folks. And I did look at folks like William Lane Craig. I looked at all sorts of apologists and did the reading for myself. And I also looked at folks from other opposing points of view. And that's when I sort of shifted in my own ideas about what I think about God. So for me, it was definitely a supremely important question, because you're right. Your belief in God, particularly Christian God, does inform your sense of ethics, right? It does inform your sense of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that note, it was extremely important. How do I know what I'm doing is right? How do I know if I'm going to be, making it to the other side or not, right? That's important, right? So yeah, it was definitely supremely important for me. I don't know if I could say it's absolutely important for everybody in all of human history, but it definitely was important for me.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, obviously that's what dialogue is people simply
Hmm.
say yes, no, or whatever. But I think this is maybe a foreshadowing of what I'm talking about in the way I want to engage this conversation.
Hmm.
So, and here's what I mean by that, Dan. If Jesus Christ is who he said he was, if he was the dimensionalized transcendent,
Hmm.
the only one in history, by the way. There's a lot of religions, lots of leaders or folks who claim to be God. Nobody had the influence. Nobody is more famous. Nobody is more influential, I don't think, than any other human that's ever existed than Jesus. He is unbelievable. Matter of fact, he's so unbelievable that many other religions try to claim him. The Buddhists, like, well, he was just a Buddhist. He was a great Buddhist. He was a prophet, the Muslims say. So everybody wants a piece of Jesus because everybody sees him as something unique in human history that is unlike anybody else that's before or since. So what I've realized, Dan, is that if that's true, not if I believe it's true, and this is a tricky one, because clearly, if you believe God doesn't exist, and I believe he does, we're kind of at an impasse because it's kind of like, well, if there's not absolute formulaic data similar to a mathematical data, 2 + 2 is 4, that we can all sort of objectively look at and say, I don't have to speak your language to understand math. I don't need to speak Spanish because the numbers are abstract and exist for all folks, irrespective of your particular language nomenclature. Then it's kind of a personal perspective, right? It's a subjective belief system, but I'm not going to do it that way. And that's what is my forewarning. I'm going to
Hmm.
presume Jesus is exactly who he said he was because that's who I believe. I've given my life to that idea. So I'm going to
Hmm.
treat him that way. And I'm going to presume that whether you believe it or not, it's true.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
the ultimate way we can even have conversations is if there is
Yeah.
a ultimate immutable truth that transcends our subjective opinions. So
Can I
that's
ask you this though?
yeah,
Because
go
I
ahead.
just think like, so I've talked to like flat earthers, for example, right? And obviously you and I both believe the earth is round. Oh, actually, you know what? I shouldn't make that assumption. Do you believe the earth is round? Yeah, you're shaking
I
your head.
thought
So
it
yeah.
was a pyramid, actually.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, yeah.
yeah. So I'm
So,
really I'm gonna
we're
have to
both on
be
the same page there,
yeah,
right?
sure.
I believe that's a fact, but that doesn't, it's also my belief that the earth is round as well. Like just because it is a fact doesn't mean I can't have a belief in something, right? So I
Right.
just want to clarify that there because I think like it could be objectively true that God is real and I could still lack a belief. And those two things aren't necessarily incompatible. We're on the same page there, right? Like
Yes,
as far as
exactly.
that's concerned.
Well,
Yeah.
and so I think that maybe that would be a great way to examine as we go forward a bit here, Dan, is that okay, so let me ask you this. Um, do you believe it's possible for
Hmm.
me to prove God exists?
Interesting. Yahweh specifically, that would be really difficult, I think. I think
What
that
do you
there's
mean?
some
Why
definition.
did you differentiate or why did you
Well,
focus?
here's why I differentiate. Some people that call into my show in particular, they say they believe in God, but God doesn't necessarily mean Yahweh of like of the
So you're talking
Bible
about
fame,
the
right?
Hebrew or Judeo-Christian God when
Right. That's sort of how I make that distinction because, God can be kind of a nebulous term. Sometimes people use God to mean different things, right?
okay,
So obviously we're talking about Judeo-Christianity, right? We're
okay,
talking about that God.
okay.
But like, there's some people that say, well, God is nature,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, well, I believe in that nature exists. So by that definition, I guess I mean God exists, but like, that's probably not what you mean. You probably mean
Right.
this specific God of the Bible who said these things and did all these actions and stuff, right?
Okay.
So that would be very interesting. If you could prove that, I would be very curious to see that.
So I think that is a good and that's what I'm glad about this conversation because it's good. I hope to have many more with many more atheists, and it's helping me
Mm,
hone how to best broach this because I don't want to waste your time or mine, but I do want to see honestly if there's a truth that we can land on in the end of all
hmm.
this, and that may not be possible. Obviously, this debate has gone on from human history, but I'm shooting for it. And let's shoot for this amazing conclusion, perhaps.
Yeah. I
Um,
would absolutely, and I say this all the time, I would love to be convinced that God is real. And in some ways, and you do mention that Christians are persecuted, worldwide. And I would
No,
say
they're
that
not just persecuted. They're the number one religious persecuted group on earth. That is data facts.
Well, that's interesting. I do think that in the United States, though, it is much easier to be a Christian than it is to be an atheist, for example. As someone who's lived both sides of that coin, I would say it's been tremendously harder for me as an atheist than it ever was when I was a Christian. But that's a separate
How many
conversation,
people
maybe.
are cutting atheist heads off in the United States, like that just happened, 2 weeks ago in the Congo? How many people are burning them inside of their atheist buildings while they're alive? How many people are stealing atheist daughters and forcing them into marriage? It's not happening. So no,
Well, you mentioned in the United States specifically, as I qualified, right? I don't doubt, and I know for a fact that Christians are persecuted in other nations, but I'm specifically talking about as an American in my experience,
right.
living
Well,
as an atheist, definitely much harder than as a Christian.
well, I
Yeah.
guess that would be subjective as well, because I could say to you, well, how about the fact that the founding fathers, let's say, if we're going to talk about America, and I agree, by the way, I always differentiate American Christianity from everybody else because I think American Christians are the weakest and the most superficial because
Mm,
we haven't been persecuted like the
mm.
rest. Where churches are growing worldwide, Christians are in the places they're most persecuted. Totally a dichotomy, totally counterintuitive to what one would think one would do when they said deny or die. Well, okay, never mind, but they don't.
Mm.
This is something that I don't see atheists having any equivalency to, and that is having something beyond
Well, I'm gonna
their
be honest with
their.
you, Brad. Atheists are killed in other nations. There are laws against atheists, just existing as people. That it's not an exclusively Christian phenomenon
True.
to be killed for their beliefs. And I'm not making a comparison between the two in the sense of, oh, let's talk about who's getting persecuted more than the other. I'm not really interested in that conversation,
Yeah.
but I am absolutely willing to go with the facts on the matter. And the facts are that both Christians and atheists are persecuted for their beliefs or lack of beliefs, right? That's definitely a
Yeah,
thing that
no, I
happens
mean,
as a global
I
phenomenon.
don't have a dog in that hunt. I just wanted
Mhm.
to make sure that people understood what was at stake, because maybe one might think, Jews would be the most persecuted because they are, I think, the most historically documented persecuted people group in human history is Jews.
Sure,
So,
sure.
and then and so I was just wanted to make sure that we understood what was at stake, and then I was very open about, hey, as opposed to American Christians who have had an easy ride. But on the same token, we are constantly fighting. And I'm not even going to go down this road, but I just want to add that caveat that, the idea that to pretend as though Christianity wasn't the foundational religious belief of the pilgrims in the beginnings of this nation is absurd. I mean, to think that
Mhm.
way is not even trying to be authentic intellectually. I'm not saying that the founders wanted a theocracy. Clearly, they did not, and some of them were not what we would call necessarily mainstream Christians. That's true as well. But they certainly respected Christianity and as a moral foundation. It was the Bible is quoted more than any other literature by all the founders, and when they congregated all the different ideas that were influencing people. So that's all a big deal. Okay, so what? It's just like in Great Britain, Christianity. It is what it is. It's the West. The West is Christian. And so it's just a matter of fact. All right, so we were talking about the idea of, first I asked you, do you think that the God question is the most important question? Um, So here's my premise. Let's see if I can do it
Mhm.
this way,
Yeah.
Dan. And again, I do appreciate your responses because they're helping me clarify, I think, how to do this in the future. Or maybe you'll come on again. We'll see. But here's my premise that I was trying to talk about with Dr. Craig. I don't think it's possible for a human being to live a life that doesn't believe in God. I don't think it's possible. Now,
Mm.
it's subconscious.
Okay.
But I think if we're talking about pure logic, pure reason, and more importantly, pure behavior,
Okay.
because I don't just judge ideas by their content. I judge ideas by do they work?
Sure.
Right? It's like I can rail against communism, or I can just say, let's look at communist societies and see how they fared. Let's see how they work compared to capitalist societies. Let's look at Muslim societies with Sharia law and see how people are treated. And let's look at Christian places. So I think there is a pragmatic way to examine the world and philosophies when they're put into practice to see how they pan out. If we're just trying to be purely instrumental in the use of these ideas, do they help us or do they harm us? That doesn't even make them true, by the way.
Yeah.
It just means that certainly should come into the equation as to, is this a valuable way to live life? Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Well, I'm confused by your initial premise, because you said you don't know how. You don't think atheists exist? I'm confused. You said I subconsciously believe in God. What's the idea there?
No, excellent. Yeah, great question. Okay, so I told you this is going to be a little bit different of an interview, and so I'm trusting that you're trusting me. That I'm really trying to make an interesting conversation. So it is not a personal attack. You understand?
It's certainly. Listen again, Brad. I've had way more contentious conversations on my show. Believe me, this is nothing. Don't worry about it. You are not going to offend me with anything you say. I'll be honest. This is, an interesting one for me. I wouldn't come onto the show unless it was going to be an interesting conversation.
Okay, good.
So please,
it's important to me as a Christian. Honestly, Dan, if I wasn't a Christian, I wouldn't give a crap. I would come full guns blazing, because. Wait, what
do you mean? Are you holding back right now? Is that what's happening? Oh, there's some freezing going on. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm about to not hold back, but I think I am, because I want to be kind to people, because I want to dignify people's lives, because Christ taught me that's the most important way to live a life. I don't think atheists can justify that from an atheist point of view. They can't. There are no morals in pure atheism. It has to be subjective. It has to be a preference. It has to be something that they desire. It has to be something that is their taste, but it certainly has no objective, transcendent, immutable qualities. It's something you've borrowed or hijacked from Christianity. That's what is true. Now, that's kind of the direction I'm going. So you said something interesting. So here we go. I have never met an atheist ever that I have listened to that can grasp the concept I'm about to tell you. Not one. Maybe you'll be the first. If life has no transcendent meaning, then nothing that we do has any meaning, purpose, value, and shouldn't even, frankly, be engaged in unless we're willing to live in a delusion and a fantasy and a pretense that you and me are having a conversation right now that has any quality to it. That's the premise that I'm going to give you. Now, I guess the easiest way to help further us along would be this. What is your thoughts? Let's start there with the idea that maybe I should have done it this way. My apologies. Are you a determinist?
A physical determinist, and I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Okay. Are you a materialist? Closest.
I'm a materialist in the sense of my analysis of the world. I use empirialism to sort of understand whether things can be true or not true, and that requires a methodological naturalism in some ways. So materialism does fall into that. Yeah.
Okay, and that being said, then, just so I'm clarifying, so that means you don't believe in transcendence? You don't believe in outside of the material world?
I don't think that I have a good reason to.
Okay, but you don't. So
nothing, I don't currently. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I can't.
So nothing.
I can't believe it in the future. I just don't have that as a belief right now. Yeah.
So nothing non-material exists. If what you're believing is true, nothing non-material exists.
It's interesting because there's a lot of debate about what counts as non-material, right? So some people say it, and because you have to understand, Brad, atheists aren't a monolith. right? So there are atheists that do believe that there are some things that may count as non-material, right?
What would
They're
that
not
be?
all atheists are materialists. So
How would that?
consciousness is often thrown out as one of these things, right? So, there's some ideas out there, not necessarily of a soul, but that there's abstract ideas or other kinds of things that could exist that we could qualify as non-material. So,
Outside of,
I just want to clarify that, because you shouldn't take my word as the atheist
okay,
gospel, right? I
okay,
don't represent all atheists in that regard, but I
okay.
I have particulars on that position.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, well, since I'm talking to you,
Hmm.
I will give you the respect of taking only your perspective on this, and I appreciate that
Hmm.
delineation. But I think it's more important that we just if we're going to have an interesting conversation, let's just make it you and me and our thoughts. You don't believe in anything outside the material world, yes or no?
Yeah, I don't think there's a good reason to. No.
Okay. Okay. So I noticed that you equivocate because you never say yes or no. You say, I don't think there's a good reason to. So it sounds like there's some reason that you're trying to hedge your bets there. I don't know why, but to me, it's evidence of God. And I believe that every atheist, when they speak and try to think and try to interact, are proving God. And they don't know it because the evidence is there, but they choose not to see it. Let me give you an example. Um, you were a Christian once, you said. Now, I
Hmm.
don't know if that was a just through a tradition. Perhaps it was your parents, perhaps it was your family. I don't know. Or maybe it was just you went to church and you believed in it. Okay. But there was a point where you believed in it. Well, the only way you would believe in Christianity is if you were given information about Jesus, because that's the whole point is Jesus. If he isn't God, if he wasn't Messiah, if he didn't die and rise, it's irrelevant. It's just another belief system that we get to survive. But you believed it, I guess, for a while. The data didn't change
Hmm.
when you stopped believing in God. The data didn't change. The proofs or non-proofs or your perspective of Christ never changed. You did. So what happens is this. A man stands in front and you stand next to me and we hear this idea of Christ. And I go, my gosh, that is the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. This is, I have to, um, I have to believe this. This is miraculous. This is what I've wanted. This is what I'm looking for. There is meaning to life. There is purpose. Oh my gosh, I get to live forever. I get to be with my loved ones. Oh my gosh, I'm forgiven for my faults. Even when I do things wrong, I'm loved in spite of. I mean, I want that thing. And boy, maybe you could do a Freudian and say, well, it's wish fulfillment. But I'm saying no. Something else tells me this is real. This is my opinion. You listen to the same material, same data and you say, yeah, I got to tell you, it doesn't compel me. Now, here's the problem, and I need your help on this. And by the way, I asked this question to William Lane Craig, so this might be interesting to get your perspective instead of a Christian acting as an atheist.
Hmm.
So we have to draw a conclusion. If I say I suck at math, let me give you this information. So if maybe you're great at it. So you look like a guy to be great at math. You look like a nerd. So you probably are an amazing mathematician or you're probably an
Wow.
engineer.
Thanks
Uh,
for that, Brad. Wow, I
okay.
don't know how to feel. Just calling me a nerd out of nowhere there, but
Well, you
okay.
look like a gamer, and I know that because my son is. But anyways, and maybe you're not. But
Hmm.
um, if somebody were to try to explain calculus to me, for example, I couldn't get it. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
calculus isn't true. I just don't get it.
Sure.
My brain can't do it. Some people can, some people can't. Okay.
Hmm.
So if I take a calculus book and somebody showed me all the information in the calculus book, it's all true. And I go, I got to tell you, it doesn't work for me. I
Hmm.
don't see it. I don't grasp it. Doesn't make any sense to me. So clearly, I just don't believe in calculus. You go, well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make the information less robust. Well, you look at it and you go, oh, I get it. Holy smoke, you're right. Oh, yes, calculus. Oh my gosh, I'm in. Let's do
Hmm.
calculus. Same information interpreted differently.
Hmm.
So that means either the information is flawed or we have to trust that my interpretation is more true than the information because atheism is an aberration. By far, the most humans in human history have believed in God or gods than have not. by far. And that is at the most simplest time in human history to this 2025, the most complex time in human history with now AI and everything else happening. There's never been a time. If there was going to be a time when people said, we're done with God, finally, we're free. But no, it's growing. More people
Well,
are believing in God. So
let me respond with that, I guess.
Okay.
If that's a good jumping off point.
Sure.
Because it's not a fact that most people in human history believe in Christianity,
I
right?
didn't say that. Saying God.
Right.
Just said God. Just said
But
God.
it's not Yahweh either, right?
Irrelevant.
Yahweh is
I
a
could
very
care less.
specific
I'm not
idea
talking
of
about.
God. But remember what I said earlier, right? If I say, oh, God is nature, well, you wouldn't call that person a Christian, right?
Yeah, right. A pantheist.
Right. So that they're not Christians. So their God belief is not the same. So I think this equivalence of saying, oh, these world cultures all have God beliefs, that's not the same thing as saying, oh, they believe in the God and the same God I believe in, and there's Trinity. So I don't think that's a correct thing to say when we're saying
but I didn't say
most
that.
people in human history believe in God,
They
right?
have.
People have God beliefs, so they're all over the place.
Okay, so
Right.
okay, well then if what you think I said was, and that's fine, we'll just make sure we get on the same page. If what you think I said is they believed in Yahweh, no, I don't mean that. So
Yeah,
I'll restate
for
they
sure.
believed in a transcendent being. Something else is beyond the material world. That is irrefutable, that more
Mm.
people have believed in that than atheists. Atheists are the aberration. You are the
Well,
outliers.
I think that also depends on your view of human history. If you have a view that human beings have existed for at least 200,000 years, right, which is what modern science says that they do, I'm not sure that those original humans had transcended beliefs, and I'm not sure that we have evidence that they did, right? Certainly, in the times of agriculture to now, most civilizations have had some sort of religion, and many of those included God beliefs. Not all of them, but many of them do, right? So I'm with you on that there.
Well,
But
I would say
I hear this with Christians a lot, and I just want to make sure that
no, but
when
well,
we're
no,
talking
that's
about this,
good. No, that's
you
fine. But
know,
I think that you prove God exists with that statement. Here's what I mean: that you just said that prior to, I guess, humans' ability to engineer and to create and to be able to use tools, whatever your perspective, you're a neo-Darwinist, I assume. So what the reach to where they could begin to analyze, induct, deduct, create tools, science, agriculture, all those things. So what's fascinating to me is you actually said the moment humans crossed over into intelligence, depth, agency, insight, wisdom, thoughts. The moment they did that, suddenly they believed in God. So to me, that should be telling to you, wait a minute, how come when they
well,
were simply
when I say that, I'm saying we only have evidence of that. Organized religion seems to be coincided with the rise of agriculture, right? So individual beliefs or clan beliefs, right? Before that, they could exist. We just don't really have the evidence to say too much about pre-agriculture humans to be able to make that
well, can I
determination.
presume that
So
you believe that? Can I presume that you think that if you believe in God, it is a downgrade from human evolution? That it is actually a less deep perspective. It's actually
no,
more
I don't think
childlike.
that's correct at all. No, I mean, I just because I'm not a Christian anymore doesn't mean I think Christians are intellectually inferior than me,
So,
Brad.
so this
That's
is an important
not what I'm
question. I
saying
think
at all.
this is wonderful, though. This wonderful conversation. It's exactly
Hmm.
what I hope would happen, because what it does show me is the obfuscation of atheists when it comes to these hard questions, because it always ends up somewhere else than what I actually said. Always. And this is and you're proving my point, I think, in real time. God must exist in this conversation. He has to, because otherwise there'd be nothing for us to talk about. We wouldn't have the ability to reason without there being something that is beyond us, that gives us immutable truths that is outside of our ability to even
Why?
contemplate.
Well, wait, whoa, wait. Okay, so let's slow it down, I think, a little bit. We're getting a little bit off the rails. So I don't have the ability to reason without God. We can't have a conversation about God without God existing.
Exactly.
Why is that the case?
Because if God doesn't exist, then we are just molecules in motion. We are just material. Thus, our thoughts aren't real. They are just part of
Okay.
a they're just part of a machinery. This, by the way, is what Sam Harris, I believe, believes. It's what Richard Dawkins, I believes. The
Well, what
best.
is that? I'm still confused. Why does that mean we can't talk about it? Like let's say that your perspective is correct and that we're just molecules in motion, that there is no God. Why does that mean that we can't talk about God?
Oh, I didn't.
Because
Okay,
I can talk about a lot of ideas from
okay.
religious
Let me
history that
let
you
me
and I
re
probably don't believe in, right? Like, there's probably some tribal deities that you and I agree probably don't exist.
okay. Let
So
me re
why do we make an exception to your God that,
I'm
I
still
couldn't make
talking.
to any
Okay,
other
well,
God?
you're right. I am referencing my God. That's true. I want to
Hmm.
be honest about that. But by the same
Yeah.
token, I think I can also make it a little bit more um, generic. And that is
Yeah.
that God in general, or the idea of something beyond us, I think is
Well,
kind of
I
what
don't
I'm.
see that, I'm sorry, because you'd said that I was equivocating, but this is equivocating right here.
How do you
You're
mean?
putting God in this idea of, oh, he's transcendent, and therefore all human beings are connected to him in some way,
Yes,
when in the
impossible.
reality is a very narrow group of human beings, and greatly, Christianity is the largest religion in the world right now, right? But in terms of all of human history, it's not everybody, right? It's not even close. They had very specific ideas about what God was and what God is and what he's doing, and to just say, oh, we're talking about transcendent beings, I don't know if that's fair to God. I don't know if God would say, hey, the Aborigines, they didn't believe in me, right? They're not talking about me. They're talking about something else. So, I have to push back on this idea that we can talk about God in quite that broad of a scope, if that makes
Okay, so
sense.
let's see if we can untease this a little bit and help you get what I'm thinking. And again, remember, I'm just kind of a commercial for folks to remember.
Mm,
I promised this was the conversation I was shooting for, and I hoped it
absolutely.
would work well. So I'm kind of throwing this out again. This isn't me being mean to Dan. I'm taking this very seriously, because if I'm right,
Hmm.
then there is no more, you're going to hell. If I'm
Hmm.
right,
No,
you're
I
going to
agree.
hell.
Yeah.
So I have to do this. You have no obligation to be kind to me. None, not based on atheism. You can
Mm,
choose to, but you have no obligation. I am obligated. So that's
mm.
why I take this very seriously, because I think it
Again,
has.
I think, Brad, you would do yourself well to actually ask atheists how they feel about that,
About
because
what?
about morality. What if I feel like I do have an obligation, right? I
Then
mean,
you'd be kidding yourself. You'd be lying to yourself.
man, I don't necessarily, so that class of ethics is deontological ethics, right? This is what Immanuel Kant and other people were talking about, but I don't personally qualify myself in that kind of ethics, but there are definitely atheists that do, and many great thinkers through history that have thought that. So you're painting a really broad brush of atheists, and I think that if you want to have dialogue with folks like myself, I think it'd behoove you to ask, oh, what do you think about ethics, rather than, oh, well, you don't have an obligation to be nice, and so nothing you do really matters. Hey, I think the things I do matter. I think that my life does have purpose. Maybe it's not a transcendent purpose, right? But atheists might be more diverse in their thinking than you might give them credit for.
Okay, I'll try that.
Mm.
Um, do you have an obligation to be good to me?
That's an interesting one, and it's separate from the God question, right? In some ways. So
Well,
I
it's what
think,
you were
like,
asking me. You were saying that I can't just assume that atheists have these don't have these obligations, and so I'm retreating. I'm coming
sure.
back and giving it from an angle that you demanded, and now suddenly that's not good enough. This is my point. This proves
Whoa,
God.
whoa, Brad,
This is
let's
my
slow
proof.
our roll here. I never said it wasn't good enough. I just mentioned I was qualifying my statement that it's different from the God question, but I'm happy to answer it for
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
Man,
Go
let's
ahead.
let's let's slow it down, bud. I mean, hey, I'm here for you. Yeah, I personally think that the reason why I want to be good to other people is a combination of things. I think it is partly because I want to be, but
Hmm.
it's partly because it makes sense to be. I think good ethics come from good reason. because I have the ability to realize, hey, other people have needs and wants and desires that are broadly similar to me. They're not always similar. There's different things that everybody wants, but on the big stuff, food, water, sleep, we kind of all need that. And so I think I can, compose myself and have others compose themselves in a way which makes sense for us to work together, and to live in a way that minimizes harm and promotes human flourishing. And I don't necessarily need a God belief to do that.
Well, you
Do I
conflate.
have a duty to you in a cosmic sense? No, but
No.
in a very real human sense, I do. In order to be a good person, I would say, yeah.
Okay, unfortunately, atheism cannot justify good because there is no good in atheism because it's an
Why
abstract
do you say
concept.
that?
Because it doesn't exist unless there's a transcendent being that says, here's what good means. So, but instead of
Why,
me,
why is that?
you're teaching me how to interact with you. So let me try it this way to see if it helps.
Yeah.
Define good.
Well, a good, in my understanding and what I hope to promote is human flourishing, right? And really, the flourishing of anything that has a consciousness, right?
What is
So
flourishing? Define flourish.
flourishing is, people living their best lives. It's minimizing harm.
Define. I need you to define best life.
Well, I mean, we can do the definition thing for God as well, right? I mean, that's,
No,
if we're going to
well,
go that
yeah, we
route.
can. We can. If God exists, he's the architect, he's the engineer, he's the storyteller. So when he says something's good, it is. When he says this is moral, it is. He's the rule
But
maker.
but
He's the guy that
why?
invented the game. He invented the
But
game. Let me ask you a
but
question.
what if
If
his
God,
nature is cruel, Brad? What if it's not something that, anybody would
what
want to
define
follow?
cruel? Define cruel.
No, I'm saying, in terms of like humans, right? Like what if God wants misery for us,
What
right?
is
What if he's the
misery?
architect of the
Wait a
world,
minute.
but
Wait. Okay, let's presume that atheism is
right?
true. I'm going to pretend that atheism is true. There is no misery.
Hmm.
There is no misery. That's just a taste I don't prefer. There's no misery. There's no
But
evil. There's
no,
no. Let
well, you
me
wait, you
ask you
don't
this.
think so? Wait, no, Brad, hold on.
Yeah.
You don't think suffering is an objective fact?
No, not if atheism's true.
No, no, I'm saying regardless of atheism being true or not, suffering is an objective fact, yes or no?
No, I'm pretending that atheism is true. No, it
Right,
isn't.
but I'm asking you, regardless of atheism being true or not, do you think suffering is an objective fact?
Are you asking a Christian or an atheist?
I'm asking you.
I'm a Christian. Yes,
Right.
yes, evil does exist, and it's an
Well, I'm
aberration.
not talking about evil. I'm talking about suffering.
Oh, suffering exists. Yes,
Yeah. I
yes.
believe suffering exists also. I don't have to have a God belief to believe suffering exists.
Justify it.
Well, I don't have to justify it. It just exists. Why do
If you don't,
that's like saying, I can't believe the earth is round without believing in a God. Well, yes, I can. There's definitely things I can point to that show the earth is round. There's definitely things I can point to that suffering exists.
it's a suffering. You're defining suffering as a perspective that you can't justify. You have to
What are you
define
talking
suffering.
about? You
Okay.
don't think, wait a minute. You think if I kick my cat right now that I can't say, oh, my cat is suffering because I'm an atheist?
You haven't defined suffering yet. If you mean by suffering that that something feels a pain, which is
Yes.
simply
That,
people feel a pain,
right. That's right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
that is not immoral. It's just a feeling. It's the same feeling you get when you can see. It's the same feeling you get when you can hear. It's the same feeling you get when you can touch. It's the same feeling you can get when you're satiated and you eat. It's the same feeling you get when you don't have water and you feel. Same
Why
feeling
is that? I'm sorry. Why does that matter?
because I'm proving to you that God exists.
What does it mean that, what does it mean that it's a feeling? Why does that mean that, that God exists?
Because you are saying that suffering exists, and I said if by suffering you mean do we have nerve endings
Yeah.
that
We
let
do,
us
but
that
and that's what can make an atheist perspective can build their sense of morality, because we all humans have nerve endings, right?
yeah
We all have the capacity to suffer,
yeah.
right? That's an objective fact that can be recognized whether you believe in God or not,
But
and
what
that's
you
what informs
but
my ethics, Brad.
I contend that what you call suffering is a religious term that is
But
simply
it's not though. You're putting words into my mouth. I'm telling you, suffering is an objective fact.
Okay,
we can observe.
but what is beautiful about this moment is you're proving my point. I knew it, and I knew it would happen. Atheists cannot wrap their minds around these ideas, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way. I'm literally mean you can't think like this because you've eliminated the transcendent as an option. You've done that. You've said there cannot be
Brett,
anything
you
but
don't
the
have to have transcendence to suffer. That doesn't make I'm
no,
you don't I'm
no,
sure you believe animals can
you
suffer,
don't
right?
have you don't have to have transcendence to suffer, but suffering is just a fancy word for pain.
Yeah. Pain
Suffering isn't,
exists.
are you saying suffering's immoral?
Yeah, I think that I think we should prevent suffering. Yeah. So in
Why?
that sense, yeah, I do think it's immoral
Why?
because I don't want that for people. I
So
don't want
what?
that for
Why
myself.
should I care what you want?
Well, I mean, you don't have to. You could be a not nice person, you know. I
What
can't
is it?
make you do
What do you
anything,
mean by
but
not? What do you mean by nice?
by treating other people well.
Why should I?
Because if you treat other people well, they tend to treat you well, and that's how
Not,
human
that's not what I
societies are
said.
built.
Nope. People kill each other all the time. People murder each other all the time.
That's true,
The
but they don't do it every day of their lives, right? Like, you know, there are times where people in organized conflicts go at each other, but that's another part of civilization is actually organizing those conflicts,
let
right?
me
By and
let,
large, we try to prevent those kinds of conflicts.
let me frame it differently.
Okay.
Um, I've heard atheist. One of the biggest problems I think atheists that create atheists, and you tell me your thoughts on this since you're an atheist.
Hmm.
I believe one of the biggest reasons that people become atheists is pain, the problem of pain. That
That's not why I'm an atheist, but okay.
I didn't say you. I said I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest reasons that people become atheists is God, please help my mother. She has cancer. She dies. Screw you, God. God, please help me. My this is happening to me. It didn't happen. Screw you, God. You've caused
Hmm.
pain. You didn't give me what I wanted. I'm out.
So how
So
many atheists have you talked to that believe that or came to that conclusion because
I
of
don't
that?
know. This is you're the start. I told you you're the guinea pig.
Okay. Well, I think that's a very harmful stereotype. And I think that tells me that you haven't talked to a lot of
No,
atheists
but I'm starting.
because,
I'm starting.
yeah,
It's beginning with
because
you.
that, you know what, Brad, that's like me saying, you know what, I was having a tough time and my mom had cancer and I prayed to God and she was healed of cancer. And now that makes me a Christian. Do you think that's a good reason for me to believe in God? I mean, maybe you do,
No, no,
but
what I'm referencing. Well, first off, if you prayed to God and mom got healed, I would think that should give you some pause. But
sure.
but then again, if you're saying, yeah,
But
it
do you
was
think
just
if that's how I should live the rest of my life as a Christian, do you think like that should be the only reason why? I mean,
no,
you would probably disagree
no.
with
But I
that,
think what
right?
I'm really trying to see if we can figure out here, Dan, is, and by the way, I'm loving this because this is
Hmm.
exactly what I was hoping could happen because I feel like it's, if nothing else, I think it'll really help people see where my premise is and see if I'm getting anywhere. And I may not. This might all
Hmm.
unravel eventually, and I might have in the course of this conversation or more, um, I'll find out that I'm wrong. But this is the fun for me. I love
Hmm.
these conversations. So
Yeah, yeah.
so so let me put it this way. By the way, let me ask you this. So one of the things I've heard from
Hmm.
atheists is um, why, if God exists and he's loving, why would he let kids have cancer? If God is living and he's
I'm
loving,
sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, Brad, but do you want to ask me what my positions are, or do you want to just like come up with your own positions and pretend like it's what I believe? Because if I don't believe that, why does that matter?
okay,
Right?
okay. Well, okay, that's a good point. I'll do that. But I had a question I want to ask
Okay.
here and I was setting it up. But, and again, I'm taking advantage, I'm taking advantage of you're my first atheist
Hmm.
to have this conversation with. And I told you you're a guinea pig. And I told you
Hmm.
I'm not going to mess around. I want to see if this it makes a conversation more worth listening to than all the other ones I've ever heard. That's what
Hmm.
I'm shooting for. Now, I could be deluding myself,
Hmm.
but that's what I'm shooting for. So here's the idea. I've heard atheists, maybe not you, we'll find out, say, hey, uh, um, if God exists and he's loving, why would he let kid get cancer? Right?
Yeah. Hmm.
My premise is this. Let's pretend God doesn't exist then. Let's pretend you're right.
Hmm.
Why does nature let kids get cancer? Why does nature let the hurricanes blow things up? Why does nature let earthquakes destroy people? Why does nature let humans kill each other? Why does nature let viruses exist? Why does nature? Is nature evil now?
Well, I don't think nature has agency. I think that's kind of a weird way to put nature. Like, I think
But that's
when
your only
atheist,
option, right? That's your only option. If you don't believe in God, it's natural for evil to happen, I retract. Not evil. There's no evil in atheism. It's a perspective. Uh, it's the only way that you could. Um, uh, I guess what I'm trying to understand is how would the atheist grapple with horrible things that happen if
well,
there's no meaning behind it? I guess that's what I'm
because we
asking.
deal with reality and we deal with we deal with it. I think that's the difference between someone like myself and someone like you is that I'm willing to take things as they are. I don't need an explanation, supernatural or otherwise, to grapple with the reality of a thing existing, right? I mean,
Okay,
cancer
so
exists, it
so
sucks,
since
it's terrible. I
so
don't think
since
there's any agency behind it. I don't think there's a malevolent being that's giving children cancer or anything like that. I think it's just the reality of the way our cells develop and sometimes mutate.
okay, so if that's the case, and that's a materialist view for sure, then we can't call it evil. We can't
No,
call
I
it
don't think you
bad.
can call cancer evil. No.
No,
Yeah.
you can't call it bad. You can't even call it,
No, you can definitely call it bad. I think that's definitely a point of contention between you and me because, evil implies like again that there's some sort of malevolent force that's doing that. I don't think that that's what's happening, but it is bad because I don't want cancer. Nobody wants cancer. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help human flourishing.
do you
So yeah, it
understand?
is bad. We can definitely make that. I think your point is that, well, isn't that a subjective perspective? And
Yeah.
it is subjective, but it's not arbitrary. Do you understand? So there is a difference between that. I think this is a lot of Christians sort of get this concept confused because they think, oh, if everything is subjective in nature, then that means that there's nothing that can be said to be true. But the rules of chess, for example, are followed objectively, right? Because there is a right way and a wrong way to make rules of chess. But how are the rules of chess organized? Well, that's just human beings talking to each other, thinking about what would make the best game, right? So the creation of those rules are subjective, but to follow them are objective. So when I have my own secular ethics, yes, it is defined by human beings and their interests, but there's very real rights and wrongs within that framework, right? If I
No,
go up to it,
no.
yeah, there definitely is in my framework. Yeah, I would
You're,
say
there
so.
is a, there is, yes, there's your perspective, your opinion, your
Well, that's all
subjective
we have, Brad.
preference.
As an atheist,
Okay.
that's
No, no,
that's
no.
all
I
that
agree with
I
you.
can
I agree
work
with you.
with,
I agree with
you
you. I
know?
agree with you. You're right. I agree with you. That's all we have is our
Yeah.
preference. Don't call it bad.
But I don't think you,
Don't
but
call it
Brad, I
evil.
don't think you have access to anything more than I do. I don't think that your access to the transcendent somehow makes your right more right than my right, or your wrong more wrong than my wrong. I really don't.
How do you miss the fact that I'm not saying that you and I are on the same plane, but I am in fact going to the rule maker and you're not. So you said
But see,
chess.
I don't
Somebody
believe that claim.
invented
I don't know how you are more so than any other person in history that says that they've talked to God and they know what's best for me, right?
because there's never been a human being in history like Christ. He's the one of a kind. He's the game changer. He's the one that proved there's nothing like this on earth. He proved prophetically that he would arrive. He did. He proved that he would live a
Mm.
perfect life. He did miraculous. I was a professional magician. I know the things that he did were impossible if they were fake.
Well,
And then he came
let's
back to life.
can we
Now,
can
you
I
don't have
explore
to
that with
agree.
you
You
for a
don't have to,
second?
huh?
Can I explore that with you? So
Sure.
like you have these beliefs in Jesus,
Mhm.
in the things that he does, in the prophecies that were foretold about
Yeah.
him and stuff. So does your belief in Jesus broadly come from the claims made by the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay. So is all of the Bible true? Is all 66 books, are they equally true in your worldview, or are they
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't
okay?
mean by true. I don't know what that means by
Well,
true.
do they depict reality? Like, there's the Gospels,
Do I
right? They
believe
talk
that
about the
they are
life of
that they're
Jesus,
historically documentation?
historically accurate. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
as much as
Okay.
I can understand them. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you why you think that these books are true or why they're historically accurate?
Because they, first off, archaeologically do conform to what is true. We know that they've used the Bible to find historical kings and so forth. It doesn't make it the word of God, but it does mean, they were trying to write what they really thought they saw or
Mm-hmm.
what they were perceiving. So it does
Mm-hmm.
have that credibility to it, that it comports to reality in that regard. People were eyewitnesses to this man that did this crazy thing. They all willing to die for this idea. I know you've heard these arguments a million times. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you
No,
know,
I want to know about you and your worldview.
yeah.
I'm not
So,
trying to make a gotcha here or anything. I'm just, trying to
yeah,
understand.
no. So it's when those perspectives, which are unique, by the way, because I've heard
Mm-hmm.
atheists say, well, it's like Zeus, it's like Thor. It's like, wait a minute, they didn't exist. Jesus really existed. He was a real guy. There's nobody questions that, including Bart Ehrman. So we
Mm-hmm.
know that he was a man that was here
Right.
and a rabbi, and even that he
Right.
was crucified. We even agree on that. So it was historically documented. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
him God? No, no. It
Well,
means
that's curious then. If that doesn't make him God, what makes you think he's God? Because like again, I'm from Waco, Texas, right? And there are folks in my hometown, and I live close to some of them that were alive when David Koresh was alive, right?
yeah.
And they'll swear to you that David Koresh was the Messiah. They
Mm.
really will. They'll tell you about the things that he did in his life and stuff, and still believe even after he's dead.
Hmm.
But I don't think that they're true, right? And I
Yeah.
imagine you don't think that they're true.
When David
So how do
Koresh,
we know that the folks who were around Jesus and who made these claims about Jesus, how do we know that excuse me, how do we know that what we're working with there is also true?
well, when David Koresh came back from the dead, where did he go live?
Well, again, so that's a claim, right, about Jesus that he came back from the
So you
dead, but
don't
like how do
believe
we
that
know the
people,
claim
so
is
are you
true?
telling me that people can't claim things historically and they're not accurate because you're not comfortable with it being God? Is that what you're
What?
saying? Like, can I claim that Caesar exists because somebody wrote it down, or do I have to take their word for it that they saw something?
Well, I'm confused by the question.
Okay, the
Use
question
because
is
I
this. I've
yeah,
heard I've heard atheists have for some reason
yeah.
they have a difficulty thinking that just because something happened a long time ago that these people were fools.
Oh
That
no,
this
I'm not saying that they can't be right, but I'm asking you why do you think they're right? Because
I
there's other people that said, oh, the Buddha did these great things, and there's people that say, oh, Lao Tzu did these awesome stuff, right? So like, why do we privilege the claims of the followers of Christ
well, I
over,
would say I would say first off because they didn't they because those ideas didn't come from a particular perspective, which was Judaism. So
Hmm.
there was a former belief system that's kind of launched the episode, which by the way had a completion. It said, "This is what's coming. Here's why we're here. Here's where we're going. Here's what's going to happen. Here's who the Messiah is." And then the guy shows up. So there's nothing like that. There's no book
So
like
it's a
that.
prophecy,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But again,
Okay.
remember, if you don't believe in the transcendent, which you said you don't, then of course that's
Hmm.
absurd to you. Of course it's absurd to you. But you said earlier that
Hmm.
some atheists do believe in some things that are transcendent, right? But you said you don't, but you said some do.
Well, I don't think that they use the word transcendent. We talk about immaterial.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
better, fine,
Mm.
fine. Um, so I guess I'm going to be very honest
Hmm.
with you.
Hmm.
I can't prove God exists.
Mm.
You can't
That's
prove he does,
interesting.
and you can't prove he doesn't.
Well, so that's kind of a dichotomy there, isn't it? Because we could say that about a lot of things. So I could say there is a teapot that's orbiting Mars right now, but it's invisible, right? And I could say, I can't prove it exists, but you can't prove it doesn't. That doesn't necessarily mean that we should believe that the teapot is there, right?
Right,
Right.
right. Now, if for some reason that teapot concept saved people's lives, brought them out of addiction, changed the world brought a moral structure, then maybe it'd be worth considering, but not, but that's a
So
ridiculous.
you're talking about the utility of the teapot belief,
Well,
because it provides good things for people. And that's interesting. That's an interesting debate, right? Should people believe in ideas even if they're false, right? But still give them benefits,
well,
right?
earlier I said to you that I also do believe that utility is another way to examine whether our faith beliefs could potentially be true. I think that if they come,
Mm,
if, for example, Christianity
mm.
brings more human flourishing than any other belief system because it taught us things nobody else teaches. Love your enemy? That's ridiculous. Pray for those that despitefully. Tell me another belief. Certainly, atheism doesn't teach that. Show me a time when atheism, when it was given power in a political system, brought human flourishing to people. Show me. It is
Well,
the most
so I
evil.
don't believe in atheist government. I believe in a secular government system, right? But I mean, I'm sure you know that Judaism and Christianity are not the only religions that taught other people to like be kind to other people, right? Like Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, like lots of other philosophies existed before
Mhm.
those.
So what?
Jesus was not novel in that.
Irrelevant. God will use whatever means necessary to to pre
Well, it
prepare.
is relevant if you just made the claim that nobody else is doing this, but that's not true.
Nobody else
Like
is
there's
doing.
other beliefs and they're older
Nobody
that
else
were
is
doing
doing
that.
what?
That we're teaching people to be kind to other people. Like that wasn't
No, no, no.
exactly.
That's well. If I said that, I apologize. What would have been a better way to frame it is these other beliefs can't justify the kindness unless it's a Christian God, because He's the one that justified it through Christ. There's nobody like Him. Give me an atheist equivalent of Jesus, a man who changed the world and brought people to kindness, human flourishing, and beauty that He's done. Show me anybody in atheism that's even close to Christ.
I mean, atheists don't need religious cult leaders to do stuff for us, right? Like we don't need to follow people in that way. I think that's one of the beauties of a lack of belief is that I don't have to, conform to any of those kinds of precepts in order to just justify existing, right?
Nobody's
Unfortunately, there's
justifying existing. We're justifying morals, goodness, flourishing, kindness. Those are the things that are transcendent that you cannot justify if atheism is true.
again, that's a part where we're going to disagree because I don't think those things are inherently transcendent. I think suffering is an objective fact. You don't have to be a Christian to believe in suffering. I think we already kind of covered that, and I think that you can build a groundwork of ethics based off of that objective fact.
What I said to you was that suffering is, if suffering is a definition of your nerve endings feeling
Hmm.
pain,
Hmm.
then of course I
It's part
believe
of it. I mean,
suffering.
there's also
But
psychological suffering. There's also other things, but
but
yes.
I want you to notice the difference between pain and
Mm.
suffering. Pain is pragmatic. Pain is simply a chemical response your brain instigates to let you know you're touching fire. That's pain.
Yeah.
It has great value because it keeps you from burning yourself up. Suffering means that that pain is bad, that pain is wrong, that
Sure.
pain needs to be not just stopped because I'm uncomfortable, but it needs to be eliminated because it's evil. That
I know
has
so
no
you're using the
grounding.
word evil, but I think needless pain, right? If we're defining suffering as needless pain, there doesn't have to be any real like intent behind it,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Well,
people are born with all sorts of, physical deformities
what
and things that, we obviously feel compassionate towards. We don't want people to have these things. So
well,
there's no need for a God to be in that. I would, if Brad, if I was a surgeon and you needed an operation done that only I could do, I would do it for you, even though you're a Christian and I'm an atheist. I'm not going to be held back by that, there's no reason for me to.
well, I think what I'm learning right now is this. It was part of my preface to this conversation. I said I don't think it's possible for somebody to live a life that has coherency and
Hmm.
has meaning. Maybe I should have gone there without believing in God, even if they don't think they do. I believe they behave as
We
though
still have
they.
time if you want to talk about that. I'm willing to go in a few extra minutes here. But yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I do think my life isn't cosmically meaningful, no, but I do think it's meaningful in the eyes
So
of myself and others. So yeah.
So here's what I think I've learned, and thank you for your time. It's been great. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you don't feel like there was anything outside. I told you I was going to be very robust about how I want to approach this because I feel like it needs to be that way because I think there's a lot at stake here. I think it's the single most important question because if I'm right, I want people to know this.
Mhm.
And if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter because I go into eternal oblivion when I die. So who cares? So, but what it did teach me is this, and I don't know, Dan, if I'm going to ever be able to overcome this in a conversation. I don't know if I can,
Mhm.
but you did exactly what I told you every atheist I have ever met and listened to has done. You can't comprehend. And again, I do not mean this as an insult. I mean this
You know,
in the way you've
Brett,
taught.
yeah, and I got to push back because I can comprehend it. I disagree. I think that's the difference. You know, I was a Christian. It's not like I can't comprehend what transcendence is. You know, I grew up my life that
That's
way.
not the question. That's not what I'm saying. So let me
Yeah.
finish. That's not
Okay.
what I'm saying. Let me finish. I have never met an atheist, and you're another one that's in that long line, that can comprehend that if life has no meta narrative, if there is no engineer, if there is no architect, if we are matter in motion, we are not here by design, we are an accident. If that's true, nothing matters. This conversation is moot, it's
Well, there's
irrelevant.
definitely atheists that feel that way.
Right.
Like,
No, I know. Yeah, that's
yeah,
what nihilism is.
but
It's what put Nietzsche in an insane asylum because he took his atheism seriously. Life has no meaning. So if I was at
well,
here's one of the
I man,
I
again,
I know you don't understand what I just said, and that's my point. You've proven
well,
my
okay, Brad, here's what I'm gonna say. If you're
yeah.
gonna have conversations with people, you know, like we could ease up a little bit on the condescension by saying, "Oh, I lack the capacity to understand." Like I'm an adult. I understand what you're saying. Okay, so let's be clear. I don't appreciate the tone that you're taking with me on that. Okay,
Okay,
I
well,
understand. I disagree.
yeah.
Okay, that is the difference. It is
Okay.
not that I lack the comprehension that I can't have a meaningful life without these grand meta narratives. Like I understand Christianity gives you a grand meta narrative. That's great. It's not the only meta narrative that exists, right?
Right.
So I'm interested in what's true and what's not true. I just don't find the claims of Christianity to be true. That's it,
Okay.
right?
So that
So,
means, does that mean that because I've looked at the evidence and said yes, and you looked at the evidence and said no, does that
mhm.
mean that we're just both taking a perspective, or does it mean that one of us is right? Or does it mean one of us is smarter than the other? Because, for example, if you
Well,
came
it
to,
doesn't necessarily mean that. It does. I mean, I think you may have been exposed to different information than I've been exposed to, right? So like when I was a Christian, when I was in Sunday school, I didn't know anything about biblical scholarship. If you
yeah,
had asked me, oh, approximately what period were the Gospels written in? I couldn't tell you that. If you'd asked me, oh, what do they say about the historical dating of, it doesn't, all these kinds of questions were things that I learned when I was an adult, when I investigated my beliefs more. I think you actually pointed to this earlier that there are a lot of Christians that believe because their parents do,
yeah,
or they're because they're part of a culture too, right?
yeah.
I think we can both agree with that. So, my act of trying to learn more about my faith was me trying to be more informed. I
Hmm.
wanted to have better reasons to believe
Yeah.
because I didn't just want to believe because my parents found it. And
And
when I
that's,
tried to find better reasons, that's where I struggled.
I
That's
got
where
you.
I sort of had this change. It
Well, I was,
wasn't because, oh, I realized that life is meaningless or that my mom got cancer and I cursed God because she got cancer. It wasn't anything like that. It was truly an intellectual, dive into that. And I wish we got to talk about that more. And I wish you asked me about that more. But you
well,
seemed like you were more interested in giving your arguments for the things that I believe, apparently, or don't believe. And I
maybe.
think that's unfortunate.
And I think that when I watch this later, maybe you're right.
Mm.
What I was, to be honest with you, I was so excited actually about finally having an atheist that I could personally look at and say, please justify this, please. And if you watch the William Lane Craig, which you did, I was confused. It wasn't about I'm angry or mad at atheists. I said, this doesn't make sense. Atheists are some of the smartest people I've known, but they're not wise. They don't understand that you can't have meaning if there's no meaning. And that's what confounded
Well,
me.
can we talk about that? Because I don't think we've explored that enough. You know, meaning has different meanings, funnily enough, to different people. Again, I've already told you, I don't believe in a cosmic meta narrative.
Okay.
Right? I don't. But why does that mean that I can't have a meaningful life? Why does that mean I can't be good to the people around me and they remember me for what I was? And maybe a couple generations down, I get remembered, and maybe that's all I need. Why do I need something more than that? Why do I need to be cosmically eternal in heaven in order for my life to have meaning?
Okay, so I'm going to try this again, and you're just going to have to help me here, Dan. I'm going to trust you.
I'm trying my best here, Brad.
Okay, I'm going to trust you to be intellectually honest.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to you about, and you got angry about this, and or at least irritated, and that's not what I was shooting for, but I do believe the reason you were irritated is because God exists, and he was trying to let you know, hey, buddy, come home. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous. I know, I get it. Listen, dude,
Okay.
I get it. It's
All right,
absurd to you. I understand how you see God and have it dismissed him. I get it. But you need to understand what I'm trying to get at. And we're going to do exactly what you said. I really want to see if it's possible to at least have you at least admit that there isn't, from an atheist perspective, an answer to this. For example, let's see if this helps. Let's say I was in an elevator with a bunch of people at the top story of a big giant building, and the cable breaks and it's plummeting down.
Yeah.
And as we're falling, I go, I just figured out the cure for cancer. What? I got the cure for cancer. And I go, guys, here's what it is. Blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh my God, you got the cure for cancer. Thank you.
Okay.
Did it matter?
Well, I mean, he wasn't able to, in that scenario, I don't know who has the cure, but whoever had the cure wasn't able to give it out. So did it matter that he had the cure? No, but
no. Thank you.
You know,
that was very honest. That's exactly my point. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is the universe collapsing? Is the universe going to be destroyed? Is the universe going to vanish? Is the universe going to
Yes, it is. But can I ask you this in turn though, Brad? Let's say God doesn't give you eternal life. Does your life have meaning?
Okay, that's a little bit convoluted. What do you mean if God? So I'm still believing in God.
Yeah, I still believe in God, but let's say it's just the concept of like Sheol, like the Jewish people, right? Where there's not necessarily a heaven or a hell. Does that mean that your life had meaning at that point?
I mean, I guess I would have to try to make sure that I'm understanding that if there's a Sheol, then that means I'm still existing.
Yeah, well, okay, so I guess let me clarify, because that's an interesting point. I guess let's say that God says, you just get this one life on earth. There's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no afterlife. Once you're here, you're done, and that's it. Your consciousness is gone. Would you cease to have a meaningful life at that point?
Am I able to ask God, is this all there is, and that's the meaningful life that you've given me, is that I just get this, and then when I disappear, that's that, but you're telling me that that's meaningful? Is that what you're saying to me, Lord? Because if
I don't know if he's answering that for you. I think that's something you got to figure out yourself.
No,
because I'm asking you. I mean, is that meaningful? Is that a meaningful life if this is all you got?
Well, unfortunately, it would be impossible to answer that question with any kind of clarity if you first premise God, who tells me you're about to go into eternal oblivion.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So does God have to tell you that your life has meaning in order for it to have meaning?
Of
Like,
course.
would it be more
Of course.
meaningful? So,
Of
so it
course.
would be more meaningful if there was no heaven, there was no hell, but God said, "This is your life. Do as you will. This is all that you got." Suddenly, that's meaningful.
Well, it would be meaningful only in the fact that if we are defining meaningful as having teleology, that there is a completion to this that by which the architect put into place. Because I can't do anything about it. If God said, here's the deal, I was nothing I can do. You're God. So all right, seems crazy to me, but you're God. So if you're telling me this is all I get, but that's good enough. So whatever you are enjoying during your cognizance,
Hmm.
enjoy it, but then you're going into eternal unconsciousness. You'll
Yeah.
never know you were here. You'll never know you existed. Nobody that you know or you won't know you were here to even contemplate if your life had meaning. Thus, it's meaningless. Clearly, if I'm no longer conscious, there's no meaning. It's
Hmm.
disappearing into oblivion, which is what's going to happen in the universe. That's my elevator concept. I don't
Hmm.
care what you come up. I don't care if you're right about atheism, that yeah, there's no real meaning, but hey, we figured out a few things, we learned to live a bit longer, we had some happy times, and then we died. Once the universe vanishes, this was a game, this was a dream, this was nothing. This didn't matter. These conversations were pretend. We were determined to have them. If we're determined, like Sam Harris said, I have to believe in God. I can't help it. You have to not believe in God. You can't help it. You're programmed that way. That's just pretend that we're having a conversation seeking absolute truth at the end. There is no absolute truth. It's all a game that our molecules are playing to allow us to flourish and continue until we don't exist, which, by the way, why am I trying to exist when I don't? I'm going to go into oblivion. That's the incoherency
Hmm.
that
So it
no
sounds like
can overcome.
then the truth of it, that kind of doesn't matter to you almost, because if I could, what if, if I, and I can't do this, but if somebody said, okay, here's the most objective evidence ever that God doesn't exist, it almost sounds like you don't even want that. It sounds like the idea of living on forever is so impactful for you that like it's going to make your life inherently meaningless if you discovered that as a truth. Like it's
Well,
almost like something you don't want.
Well, that certainly would be true if
Hmm.
there was no God, but there's meaningless. But the fact that we can have the conversation means God exists. That's my point. You can't
Hmm.
contemplate the non-existence of God unless there is something that has given you the ability to reason and to go outside of your material. Let me give you an example. If there is a hard drive in your computer, it's filled with data. Does it ever
Yeah.
teach itself things, or does it always need you to go in and begin to search for something? Hey, I want to learn about tribes in Ecuador. Does the computer start talking about, or does me, a subject, have to come over and say, show me tribes in the Ecuador? And it says, here's some data. And I go, oh, interesting. That's what my brain is. Collects data based on 3 dimensions and observation of with 5 senses.
Well, but that's I'm sorry, that's a bad example. I'm somebody who works in computers. We have computers that
I
can
knew
take
you were a
data.
nerd. I told you
Sure.
you were.
Well, we have computers that can take data from environments with no human input at all. Once we set them up, they can kind of
Whoa,
do
whoa, whoa,
stuff
whoa,
on
whoa,
their
whoa,
own.
whoa, 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 whoa.
You know.
Once we set them
Well, yeah, they're
up,
not built on their own, but
well, they're not built
yeah,
on theirs. Welcome to
computers
God,
aren't. But
brother.
that's different from people.
Welcome to
That's a separate
God, brother.
conversation. I mean, if we're going to talk
It's
about
not a separate conversation.
evolution and
It's
stuff.
the ultimate conversation. You thank you. What a perfect example of what I'm talking about. In the best case scenario, as humans analyze the world, that any kind of data, information,
Hmm.
anything is always given by an agent, always given by an engineer, always given by something subject object distinctive that we can observe and draw conclusions for, that the information cannot draw from itself. We need somebody else to make that conclusion. You accept that in
What?
computers.
Man, Brad, you have a great habit of just putting a lot of words into my mouth. I gotta say, I've talked to a lot of Christians, but I'll tell you, it is quite frustrating how often you do this.
Okay. Do what?
I have no idea what you're talking about. This subject object distinction, I made nothing of that sort. You're
Well,
kind of going on about this, and I have no idea why.
well, let me see if I
Uh,
can let me see if I can clarify then.
yeah,
You said that computers
yeah.
hold data, and I guess you said that sometimes they can be programmed
You
to
can make
certain.
autonomous computers. Yeah, they can do things on their own.
Okay. And then I said, aha, but somebody has to program them.
Yeah,
That's what I said.
what does that have to do with anything that we've been talking about? I'm very confused because people are not robots, right? We're a whole other thing. But that doesn't mean that we're intelligently designed or anything, if that's what we're going for.
Well, because would you say your brain is like a hard drive?
It's similar for sure. There's definitely similarities. Yeah.
Okay. How many hard drives are you aware of that have programmed themselves, created themselves from whole cloth, and were infused with data that they created on their own without any input from an engineer?
Well, again, like I don't think that tracks with people at all. Like
I know you don't.
I
I
don't think
told
that
you that.
that's how people came to be.
I
Like I don't
know.
think like like I don't think that's how Christianity really works either. I mean, like I don't know. Are you a young Earth creationist? Do you think God like created Adam and Eve and then the whole world started from there? Like, is
He
that
definitely created Adam and Eve. How that worked or how
so?
that
Is that
worked, I don't know.
6,000 years ago
I don't
or?
know. Oh, I don't know. No idea. No
Well,
idea.
it's funny because like you're saying I can't observe objective facts, but we can't even agree on how old the world is
Oh,
because Christianity is kind of preventing you from that. Because just science has an answer. Science doesn't say the world was 6,000 years old, right?
I, I didn't say it was. Why are you putting words in my mouth?
Well, yeah, but you're saying you can't know it. But I'm saying, yeah, we can know that the world isn't 6,000 years old, right?
I didn't say. What do you mean? I can't know it. What
Well,
do you mean?
I mean, do you think it is or do you think it isn't?
I said to you, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's 6,000. I'm not a young
Okay.
Earth creation, if that's
Okay,
what you're
yeah.
asking me.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. But I'm saying like we can categorically rule that out as being true, right? Like,
Yeah.
you were talking about logic, we're talking about reason,
Yeah.
you
What is
know.
logic and reason? Is that something that's material?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I know the answer to that myself, to be honest with you.
But
There's a
you
lot of
use it.
arguments about that.
So why do you use it then?
Well, logic and reason, and by the way, I do have to get going here in a few minutes here because I am
Okay.
past my time.
Okay.
But like, why do I use logic and reason? I think logic and reasoning can help me further my own efforts as a person. I think it can help me understand true things.
Can you use
I
logic
think it
without
can.
presuming it exists?
Well, I never said it doesn't exist. I just don't know if it's material or not.
Mhm. But you
I
have
definitely think logic
but you have
exists.
faith that logic exists before you use logic, yes?
Do I have faith that logic exists before I use logic?
Yeah. In other
I
words, you
don't. I
can't
mean, I think logic exists. I don't know why I need faith for that.
because you use it. So you have to assume it makes sense, that it's coherent and comports to reality.
Well, there's a lot of things I use without faith. I mean, I guess do I have to trust that my senses are correct? I mean, that's kind of different from logic,
No,
right?
logic is the most important thing because it's what allows us to have a coherent conversation and see if we can find truth to it that is outside of us. Truth exists
Right.
whether
So
you and I exist or not.
I'm talking about in the history of philosophy of thought, right? There's rationalism, which is this idea that we can come to conclusions and ideas without observations in the real world, and there's also other ideas that say, hey, we actually need the outside world to make any determinations.
Yeah.
But that comes in the question, okay, like what about math? Can math be, determined purely by logic, or do we need the outside world to sort of verify that? And so those are interesting philosophical questions that I don't have the answers to be honest. I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
Okay, well, the
But
answer is God, and that's what you're going. Listen, I'm
I
going to let you
guess,
go. I'm going to let you
yeah.
go because I don't want to take your time. And listen, Dan, I hope you enjoyed this. I know that there was a few moments that you felt maybe it was aggressive, and I tried to preface it with this. And I told you this isn't honestly, brother. This is an experiment. It's an
Mhm.
experiment. I'm trying to say is that can I find an atheist who can come to the grips with the fact that I don't know that what I believe can be coherent. I can do it, it works. I don't know that I can logically and honestly, fairly say this is coherent, but it allows me to function. And so that's why I do it. And you could say the same, by the way, in fairness to me. But I believe that the ability for us to have this conversation and that we actually believe it might get to an actual truth that existed prior to us and will exist after us is because God exists. The architect has given us not only the desire to do these things, but a conclusion we can rely on. That's what I believe. And so I hope you'll come back. This has been, for me, it's been fun. Maybe you don't like it and you're going to tell everybody what a miserable man I was, but I was really, really curious about this and wanted to see if it would pan out. So thank you for the conversation. Matter of fact, if you have other atheists that you think might be interested in this, I would love to talk. I want to see what the answers are or if we can find some. I hope that I was fair in what I said and set up. And I will say that if I insulted you in some ways, or if I was unfair or in some ways, I apologize. I was not meaning that. I just get really ramped about this. It excites me, and maybe it can come across too aggressive. Was not my intent, but I did forewarn you. I'm going to try something and hope that it works in a way that is helpful to everybody. So that being said, your podcast is called Objectively Dan. I recommend people go watch it, listen to it, see what you have to say. Obviously, you're an interesting person.
Yeah, show's called Truth Wanted.
Truth Wanted.
And yeah, my name is Objectively Dan. But yeah, Brad, I do appreciate talking with you. I would do it again with you. I absolutely would. I hope I was able to give you some enlightenment on my perspective. I'm not sure that I did.
Well, no, you did. You did. You helped. You confirmed what I already knew about the patterns I've watched when atheists think about these ideas. And again, this isn't an insult. It's
that, but Brad, that is kind of insulting, isn't it? Like, if I had a show where I just talked to Christians and I said, see, every Christian I talk to, they think in the same patterns, and that's why they're all this way. You wouldn't find that insulting a little bit.
But when it comes to the essentials, Dan,
yeah,
like if you were to had a show where every Christian believed that Jesus Christ was God, and that's their pattern, well, of course, that's what makes you a Christian. And if every atheist believes that there's meaning in meaninglessness, and that's all I've ever seen, and they've never come outside of that, what am I supposed to say? That's not true. It's what I've observed. Am I wrong in that observance? That's all I'm getting at. And maybe we didn't dissect it enough to help you articulate it more, so that maybe you think I left it hanging or I didn't give you enough time. And I'm happy to have you back on, and we can focus on that. Maybe that's what we should do. Maybe this experiment showed me if this is going to get anywhere, that's the topic that needs to be contemplated, because that's where I think we have a big sticking point, but I think it's the single most important thing. Is there meaning to life, and can it be justified by an atheist? Folks, this is Brad Stein Has Issues. This was my first conversation with a very gracious and kind man, Objectively Dan. Still don't know his last name. Maybe he's on the run. He doesn't want us to know, so I'll keep it there. But wouldn't be... I've been in the same boat. Obviously, I'm joking, folks. I'm a comic. Folks, remember, if they ever say you're being politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. Nothing is more important than speaking truth. Christianity is the last truth teller on earth. And remember, I'm doing what I do, putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday. Woo!
All right.
Nice job, man. That was amazing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So tell me, as we clear out, just so I can make sure we're on a good spot here, anything about that you could think was unfair or not what I was trying to premise before, to help prime you where I was trying to go and see if it would work? I just want to know so I can correct it.
Yeah, no, I think based on our conversation, you followed up on what you wanted to do, which was you have this idea, this premise that you want to try to lay down with me. So I wanted to push back on that. I think next time, Brad, I would love to talk to you about, because I think you're interested in this question of meaning and stuff, and that's I get that a lot when talking to people about stuff, and I'm interested in wanting to know true things, so like I may not want to be an atheist if I find out that God is real, right? If I don't currently believe in God because I just don't think he's real, but if I did find evidence to believe in that, I would want to know about that. So those are the conversations I like to have, where it's like,
well, listen,
so if we talked again, I would love to maybe explore some of that, because You
Well,
know, if you want to make
first
me a
off,
Christian again, you want to evangelize to me, I'd love to see that happening, because the meaning stuff,
I don't want you
you
to
know.
become a Christian. I want you to know what is
Well, you
true.
do, don't you? Because, like, I mean, you
Well,
want me to believe in God, right?
I don't, well, I guess you have to understand me though, buddy.
Yeah.
I've learned that I was never called to be a Christian. I was called to be a disciple. That means the discipline of this ultimate truth that God has provided once in human history through Christ. I believe
Hmm.
that's true. I don't think anything else can justify it. That's what we were trying to talk about. I promise you we'll do this again because um, you have a countenance that is helpful. You're kind of even keeled. I think that's important because otherwise it can just become. I don't want to hear to argue or shout at each other. I want to try to
Oh
get to,
no.
but I do want to cut to the chase, I guess. And I'm going to be honest with you, Jan. I've seen so many atheists who I'm sitting here yelling at the radio. It's like you don't even know what and it frustrates me. And it's like finally I
Mm.
can ask the guy point blank, this doesn't make sense to me. So, and I'm
Mm.
sure you do the same thing with theists that you feel like are missing something. So that's why I was so uh, aggressive about it because
Mm.
finally I could try to really see if I could figure this out. And anyways, so we'll do that. We'll talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah. Well, I
these other.
apologize if I frustrated you. That definitely wasn't my intention, Brad, you know.
No, you didn't. And I
Mm.
did feel sensitive about not wanting you to feel like I was attacking you. And I think that is a potential rut that can happen when people are uh, very passionate about something that they are feel is so important that
Hmm.
it could lead to what could appear to be a you know anger or aggression instead of uh, passion and hope.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
of course I want you to believe in God because you're made in his image and I want you to know him.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
you don't believe that anymore. But
Yeah.
that's my obligation to do. And
Yeah.
so again,
And I'm not, and I'm letting you know that that's okay. I'm not offended by that notion.
yeah.
I understand. There are some Christians that will say, "Well, I never was truly a Christian," because, you know, there's the verses about sort of, you know, talking about that some interpretations say that.
Well,
But you
and
know, from my perspective, I really was a true believer, and I took that with the full sincerity and the full not only understanding but also obligation that meant, and that obligation meant that
you
I
know what?
would
Let me ask you.
follow.
Let me ask you a
Yeah,
question
yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick. I'm sorry that I'm sure you got to get to
It's
work
okay.
here.
I do got to get to work in a bit here, but yeah, go ahead.
Um, wh- yeah. Let's do this again soon.
Mm,
Maybe I should have a part one and part two.
sure.
Because the first part, like we just did, I think could be me prefacing, hey, I'm experimenting with something. I'm going to be really aggressive about this because I feel like atheists have never answered it and I want to see if I can get to the bottom of it. But then we can come in the second phase and we can kind of go over as we kind of debrief. Okay, what
Mm,
did we get from that? How did you feel? What are we doing? And now let's move to these and let's be more focused here. I think this is important conversation and I think it will do well on the internet. Nothing gets more engagement than atheists. They run to the rescue whenever
yep.
they feel an atheist being attacked. And that's good because it gets engagement. It gets people to hear about it and listen and see if there's something here to be said. So let's
Mhm.
do it soon. Is this a good time for you? Usually is mornings or
Yeah, we can do the mornings. I work from 9 to 6 Central Time. And so I work from home, but it's just I can't promise like an hour and a half in the middle of my work day, pretty much, you
okay.
know, just
So if
based
we did
on
it afterward, you'd have more time.
we did
Like
afterwards, that's fine. Yeah. Hmm.
okay, and you do know I'm a comedian, right?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with your work. Yeah.
Okay, I only said that because sometimes I joke around and I thought you thought I was being smart
Oh
ass.
no, Brad, you know,
Okay.
here's the, you know, we talked about persecution, right? I definitely believe that Christians are, you know, I believe that when I was a Christian, I still believe that today, that people are persecuted for their religious beliefs. That's unquestionable. You know, what I hope I can impart to you in my conversation with you at least is that not only are atheists also not always seen in the best light, but you know, there is a stereotype among atheists, the angry atheist, right? And you actually, I think, talked about it beautifully. You said, well, you know, some people come across as angry and really they're passionate. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of folks, not just myself, that don't like being put into a box. They don't like
Yeah.
saying, hey, I'm not this way because my mom got cancer. I'm not this way because of
Yeah.
this. You know, I really looked at this question and I took it seriously. And you know, a lot of
Yeah.
atheists, they're frustrated when they don't when they don't feel like others are listening to that perspective, because
I
you know we
love
are a
that.
minority in the United States, and there's a lot of people that
I
go ahead.
love that. I love that because it
Mhm.
really humanizes, no pun
Yeah,
intended,
yeah.
humanizes the atheist. And one of the things that I said in the beginning is, agree to disagree agreeably. We have to be able to give dignity, which, by the way, I think is a Judeo-Christian ethic, the idea that we're all
Mhm.
made in his image. And that's where we get this whole idea of human rights. So, yeah, I'm never going to backtrack. I've given my life to this thing.
Mhm.
And if I'm wrong, I'll never know. And if I'm right, I'll be in glory. It's one of those
Yeah.
two.
Here's what's cool about me is that I'm not giving my life to atheism.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a chance you could catch me swinging, you know what I mean? So, you know,
I
there's
would
one
not be.
version of this that where, you know, you turn me into a Christian, and then, you know, you get a whole, you know, you make a whole thing about
The
that.
only
I'm just
reason
saying.
I would want you to be a Christian is because it's true.
I appreciate that.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And I would say the same for you as well.
Yeah.
I try to live my life in wanting to believe as many true things as possible,
Yeah, I do.
you
I do.
know.
Okay. Well,
Mhm.
listen, I'm going to have,
Yeah.
by the way,
I
though,
do gotta get going. I'm sorry, but yeah.
no, my producer
Um,
was I'll have him connect. We'll do this maybe this week, maybe next week if you're around. Let's do it again. And I'll even try to do it later so you don't have to be on a time
that'd be
crunch.
great. Yeah. That'd
Yeah.
be great.
That,
Because
but
I'm late for work right now, but you know what? It was worth it. I had a great time with you. So I'm looking forward to
seriously,
doing it again, Brad.
you represented atheists well, and I appreciate it, and I hope maybe we can become friends, or at least friendly, and see if we can continue to do some good work. At least put this out and see if it interests and maybe helps people down the road.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks.
Dan.
I look forward to it.
All right,
Yeah, I'll look forward. You have my email, so that's the best way to get me.
it'll
Um,
be within the next week.
okay,
All right,
sounds
thanks,
great.
buddy. I
Talk to
appreciate
you
it.
later.